Chapter 900. Nangong Ling and the other two were shocked by the sudden aura and voice. The Mingwang prayer beads hung on Su Zimo's wrist and were hidden in his sleeves. Therefore, Nangong Ling and the other two instinctively thought that Su Zimo was the one who released the voice and terrifying scorching aura. However, the three of them felt that something was amiss. Just now, the voice sounded old and was clearly different from Su Zimo's voice. Furthermore, there was endless anger in the voice. This was a matter of 100 refinement sect. What did it have to do with this person? Why was he so angry? It was simply inexplicable. Right then, an extremely terrifying spirit consciousness descended from afar. Su Zimo had experienced spirit consciousnesses of such intensity many times in Thousand Demon Valley. That was the spirit consciousness of a Dharma characteristic. Soon after, a whistling sound rang out. It came from afar and approached at an astonishing speed. It was heading towards this place like lightning. As expected, the person who came was a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Su Zimo noticed that the person was coming from the direction of 100 refinement sect and felt slightly relieved. On the other side, Nangong Ling and the other two were delighted when they heard the howl. Nangong Ling said in a deep voice, "It's Master. Master is here to pick us up." Ru Xian clapped happily. Yu Hanyun turned to Su Zimo and whispered, "The person who came is our master. His Dao title is Scarlet Star and he's a Dharma Dao Jun." Su Zimo nodded. In the blink of an eye, a tall and strong figure descended. The person was a head taller than Su Zimo and wore scarlet robes with flame patterns that seemed like they were about to burn. He walked with a majestic gait. "Master." Nangong Ling and Yu Hanyun bowed. Ru Xian giggled as she leaned forward and shook the person's arm, asking coquettishly, "Master, why are you here?" Dao Lord Scarlet Star glared and harumphed in a dignified manner. Ru Xian hurriedly retracted her arm in fright. She bowed and said honestly, "Greetings, Master." Dao Lord Scarlet Star said in a deep voice, "Initially, I was about to enter seclusion when I sensed something on a whim. Not long after I left the sect, I sensed the fluctuations of a battle here and hurried over." Pausing for a moment, Dao Lord Scarlet Star surveyed his surroundings and looked at the few corpses on the ground. Finally, his gaze landed on Su Zimo. "Seems like I'm late." Su Zimo cupped his fists and bowed slightly. "I'm Mo Ling. Greetings, Senior. Were you the one who saved my 3 useless disciples?" Dao Lord Scarlet Star exuded a suppressive might and asked slowly. Under the pressure of Dao Lord Scarlet Star, Su Zimo's expression was calm as he replied indifferently, "I just happened to pass by and did it in passing." "Good." Dao Lord Scarlet Star praised internally. It was truly rare for Jining Jinjuan to be able to remain calm and composed under his suppression. Dao Lord Scarlet Star retracted his pressure and asked with a much friendlier attitude, "Young friend, you were righteous and saved my 3 useless disciples. I wonder what kind of reward you would like. If it's within my means, I won't decline." Su Zimo was about to reject and Nangong Ling beside him shouted with an anxious expression, "Master." Dao Lord Scarlet Star frowned and glanced sideways. Although Nangong Ling did not say anything, it was clear that she was using her spirit consciousness to send a voice transmission and no one knew what she was saying. Dao Lord Scarlet Star's expression changed and his eyes shone with a divine glint. The might of a Dao Lord descended once more. Dao Lord Scarlet Star narrowed his eyes and turned to Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian, asking in a deep voice, "Is what Ling said true?" Ru Xian nodded. Yu Hanyun looked at Su Zimo worriedly and nodded as well. Suddenly, Dao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and emitted an extremely hot aura as he walked towards Su Zimo with a cold gaze. "Speak. Where did you learn the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra from? Who are you?" Dao Lord Scarlet Star's aura was domineering and his gaze was like a torch, as though he wanted to incinerate Su Zimo. "Master." Yu Hanyun said hurriedly, "This fellow Taoist did save the 3 of us and has no ill intentions. Please show mercy, Master. Humph. Tao Lord Scarlet Star did not even turn back. He merely glared at Su Zimo and said coldly, that depends on whether he's honest and can give me a good reason not to kill him. The three of you know very well that the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra was passed down by our Grandmaster and is the foundation of our lineage. It's not allowed to be leaked to outsiders. If this lad doesn't explain himself, he won't be able to escape death today. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said with a murderous aura that left no room for negotiation. Right then, a sigh sounded in Tao Lord Scarlet Star's mind. The sigh carried an indescribable vicissitude and endless sadness. Your little who? Immediately after, a question sounded in Tao Lord Scarlet Star's mind, as though he did not dare to confirm it. Tao Lord Scarlet Star's expression changed and he could not help but take 2 steps back. He looked at Su Zimo as though he was looking at a ghost. Master, what's wrong? When Nangong Ling and the other 2 saw Tao Lord Scarlet Star's strange reaction, they were even more confused and hurried forward to ask. Tao Lord Scarlet Star's reaction was intense as he pushed Nangong Ling and the other 2 away and hollered, "Go away." Tao Lord Scarlet Star glared at Su Zimo who was not far away with a shocked expression. No one could sense the shock in his heart at this moment. His original name was Lin Hu and he joined 100 Refinement sect more than 5,000 years ago. Ever since he entered the Void Reversion realm, he established his Tao title, Scarlet Star. Apart from some grand elders who had not left the sect for a long time, no one in the sect knew his original name. As for the name, Little Hu, it was only called that more than 5,000 years ago when he had just joined the sect and was still a child. At that time, he had a strong head and was clumsy in everything he did. However, his master and grandmaster loved and took care of him. Back then, apart from his master, his uncle masters and grandmaster who was famous in Tianhuang mainland called him that. After so many years, when he heard that title again, Lin Hu, the current Tao Lord Scarlet Star, felt as though he had reversed time and returned to the past. Who are you? When Tao Lord Scarlet Star asked the question again, he was no longer as aggressive as just now or as murderous as just now. Instead, there was a hint of trembling, uneasiness and anticipation. Sigh. Another sigh sounded in Tao Lord Scarlet Star's mind. Initially, Hakka Dojin was not sure. After all, when he went missing, Tao Lord Scarlet Star was still a child and his name was not Scarlet Star. However, now that he saw Tao Lord Scarlet Star's reaction, Hakka Dojin no longer had any doubts. Hakka Dojin released a spirit consciousness and formed a scorching red barrier that isolated Nangong Ling and the other 2. Thereafter, a scarlet essence spirit floated out from Su Zimo's left wrist. Standing in midair, it looked at Tao Lord Scarlet Star with a sorrowful and benevolent expression. Tao Lord Scarlet Star was stunned. He looked at the essence spirit not far away with disbelief in his eyes. Then, it was ecstasy, followed by sorrow and finally endless grievance. The Dharma characteristic expert fell to his knees with a thud. His lips trembled like a child reuniting with his family as tears gushed out and he cried out, "Grandmaster." Chapter 901. Upon hearing that, Hakka Dojin's heart stirred as he nodded repeatedly. Good lad, you've cultivated to this stage as well. Very good, very good. Hurry and get up. Tears streamed down Tao Lord Scarlet Star's clothes but he merely shook his head and knelt down. Hakka Dojin felt an ominous feeling surge in his heart. Taking a few deep breaths, he asked, "Is your master, Heaven's Will, all right?" Heaven's Will Tao being was Hakka Dojin's eldest disciple and the only one among his 7 disciples who managed to cultivate the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. After Hakka Dojin went missing, it was all thanks to Heaven's Will Tao being that the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra was passed down. Upon hearing Hakka Dojin's question, Tao Lord Scarlet Star's expression was sorrowful as he sobbed, "Master is already dead." Ah! Although Hakka Dojin was prepared, he still exclaimed softly with an unresolvable pain in his eyes. After a long silence, Hakka Dojin could not help but ask again, your uncle masters, Shiryu, Changhai, Luo Ling and the others. Hakka Dojin could not continue asking. Tao Lord Scarlet Star lowered his head and pursed his lips tightly. His shoulders trembled as he sobbed softly. The uncle masters did not manage to enter the Dharma characteristic realm and their lifespans were exhausted. They have already passed away. Finally, Tao Lord Scarlet Star said it with difficulty. Sigh. When he heard that, Su Zimo sighed internally. Suddenly, he felt a sense of pity towards Hakka Dojin. Time was heartless. Without entering the Dharma characteristic realm, one's lifespan was less than 5,000 years. Who would have thought that by the time Hakka Dojin returned, all 7 of his disciples had already passed away? The saddest thing about 5,000 years was that things had changed but people had changed. Hakka Dojin remained silent and closed his eyes with a sorrowful expression, as though he had aged significantly in an instant. The figures and appearances of his 7 disciples flashed through his mind. The sounds of the 7 disciples laughing and playing with each other seemed to still be ringing in his ears. When he left, these disciples were not very old. The oldest was only 1,000 years old. The youngest, Shiryu, was just a little over 100 years old. In his eyes, he was like a child. When he returned, he could no longer see these people. Su Zimo stood quietly to the side, not knowing how to comfort Hakka Dojin. This was the cruel and merciless world of cultivation. In addition to the battles between cultivators, races, righteous and evil, immortals and devils, there was also the constant threat of time hanging behind their necks. On the path of cultivation, if one were to stop moving forward, this saber would slash down. No one will be spared. Suddenly, Hakka Dojin seemed to have thought of something. He opened his eyes, and there seemed to be 2 balls of fire burning in his eyes. Something's wrong. Hakka Dojin shook his head. It's understandable that Luo Ling, Shiryu, and the others did not manage to cultivate the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra and could not advance to the Dharma characteristic realm. However, your master, Heavenly Heart, had clearly cultivated the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. Furthermore, when I left, he was already at the perfected Void Reversion realm and could advance to the Dharma characteristic realm at any moment. How could he have passed away? At that point, Hakka Dojin suddenly recalled that just now, Tao Lord Scarlet Star said that his master had died and not passed away. Generally speaking, when a cultivator died, it was not a good ending. What happened to Heavenly Heart? Hakka Dojin asked slowly. Tao Lord Scarlet Star had already stopped crying. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth with hatred in his eyes. It's the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall. Who is he? Hakka Dojin asked. I heard that he's a traitor of 100 Refinement sect. Tao Lord Scarlet Star nodded and raised his head to look at Hakka Dojin with a conflicted expression. His Tao title is Purple Flame. He was my senior brother, Hakka Dojin continued calmly. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. To think that the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall was an expert of Hakka Dojin's generation and was even Hakka Dojin's senior brother. Hakka Dojin asked, what happened? About 4,000 years ago, the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall betrayed the sect and established his own faction to create Hellfire Hall. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said, he was extremely ambitious. From the moment he established Hellfire Hall, he wanted to replace 100 Refinement sect. What is the Grand Elder of the sect doing? He's allowing Hellfire Hall to exist to this day. Hakka Dojin frowned. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said bitterly, it's said that Hellfire Hall has the backing of a super sect. Even the sect doesn't dare to act rashly. Hakka Dojin said indifferently, his achievements in weapon refinement are not inferior to mine and he has the support of a super sect. I'm sure his development will be extremely fast. That's right. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said, when the elders of the sect saw that Hellfire Hall was already established and their rise was inevitable, they could only give up. They only hoped that the 2 sects would coexist peacefully. However, the tree wants peace but the wind won't stop. Not only does Hellfire Hall want to replace 100 Refinement Sect, they also want the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. The flames in Haka-Dojin's eyes burned even brighter. Tao Lord Scarlet Star continued, Master had long entered the Dharma characteristic realm. However, he was schemed against by the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall and was captured alive. He painstakingly tortured and whipped Master's primordial spirit, trying to force the Red Flame Heart Sutra out of him. However, Master refused to say a single word even until his death. Thus, Master's primordial spirit was torn apart and his Tao vanished. Su Zimo was enraged when he heard that. Such a method was simply too vicious. No matter what, the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall was once a disciple of 100 Refinement Sect. However, he was so vicious to his former sect mates that even gods and ghosts could not tolerate him. Senior Brother Purple Flame, when I recover my physical body, I'll definitely pay a visit to retrieve your soul and refine it in front of my disciple's grave for 3 days and 3 nights. The flames in Haka-Dojin's eyes intensified, as though they had turned into 2 gigantic fireballs that wanted to incinerate all living beings in the world with torrential killing intent. Grandmaster, don't be rash. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said hurriedly, the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall is no longer the same as before. He has long entered the conjoint body realm. Grandmaster, don't take the risk. Above the Dharma characteristic realm was the conjoint body realm and could be considered a mighty figure. They were omnipotent. In the past 5,000 years, Haka-Dojin had struggled between life and death. It was already a blessing that he was able to survive. However, the cultivation of the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall did not fall behind. Instead, he improved day by day and was already a mighty figure. The gap between the two of them had widened. Haka-Dojin was fearless and merely sneered, conjoint body mighty figure? Very good. If he's still the Dharma Dao Jun, it'll be boring for me to kill him. His words were extremely bold and Su Zimo's eyelids twitched when he heard that. Tao Lord Scarlet Star could not help but ask, Grandmaster, where have you been all these years? Your body. It's a long story, Haka-Dojin said, my body has been destroyed. The reason why I've returned is to reforge it. Don't worry, Grandmaster, Tao Lord Scarlet Star clearly had some understanding of the ancient technique of forging bones and said hurriedly, the sect has many top-notch materials for forging bones. If you need anything else, I'll definitely do my best to get it for you, Grandmaster. Grandmaster, you had better hurry back to the sect with me, Tao Lord Scarlet Star continued, if those old fogies in the sect know that you're still alive, they'll probably faint from laughter. Chapter 902. It's not appropriate to leak the news of my return for the time being. Haka-Dojin said in a deep voice, apart from some old fogies in the sect, don't spread the news to anyone else, including your 3 disciples. Don't worry, Grandmaster. Tao Lord Scarlet Star patted his chest and guaranteed, I'm the tightest. If Nangong Ling and the other 2 saw this scene, their jaws would probably drop. Their master who was stern and reserved in front of them actually exuded a hint of childishness in front of Haka-Dojin. Haka-Dojin thought for a moment and asked, just now, I heard that 100 Refinement Sect is going to have a weapon refinement competition with Hellfire Hall. When is it? 3 months later, at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. At the mention of this, Tao Lord Scarlet Star revealed a worried expression. Haka-Dojin asked again, what's the 1,000 Crane Tea Party? Why haven't I heard of it? Tao Lord Scarlet Star said, about 3,000 years ago, a mystic tea tree was discovered in a valley under the jurisdiction of Chigurumon. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. There were some records of the mystic tea tree in the ancient books at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. The mystic tea tree was considered a mutant from the primordial era and had long gone extinct. It was said that the tree was extremely magical and its leaves would only mature once every 1,000 years. Furthermore, after the leaves matured, they would wither within a day. If one were to drink it with spirit spring water within a day, it would have an unimaginable nourishing effect on the essence spirit of a nascent soul. A cup of mystic tea could help a cultivator cleanse the dregs in their essence spirits better and advance to the void reversion realm faster. The effects were shocking. The leaves of the mystic tea tree can't be stored and are outdated and wasted. Jinying Jinjuan of Chiguramon doesn't have that many. Dao Lord Scarlet Star said, therefore, on this day, Chiguramon will invite Jinying Jinjuan of the Middle Continent to come here and exchange insights over tea. The Thousand Crane Tea Party is held once every 1,000 years and is a rare opportunity. Other than the immortal sects and Buddhist sects, cultivators from the various major sects and aristocratic families will also come. If I could get a cup of mystic tea to drink, it would be more worth it than cultivating in seclusion for hundreds of years. Su Zimo understood. In other words, the Thousand Crane Tea Party was a rare event in the cultivation world. Although it could not compare to the fight for the phenomenon ranking, it was still highly anticipated. At that time, all the major sects and clans would show up. The battle between 100 Refinement Sect and Hellfire Hall for weapon refinement was perfect for this tea party. It would attract the attention of countless cultivators. Dao Lord Scarlet Star was worried. If we lose this competition, our 100 Refinement Sect's reputation will be tarnished. Hellfire Hall will definitely not let go of this opportunity. At that time, if the super sect behind Hellfire Hall takes the opportunity to support them, Hellfire Hall might replace 100 Refinement Sect. Su Zimo didn't care much about the artifact refining competition. After all, he couldn't help much in this matter. The only thing he paid attention to was the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Since all the major factions were gathered at this tea party, he wondered if Di'in would appear. If Di'in appeared, he could find an opportunity to kill him to prevent future troubles. Hakka Dojin frowned and asked, are you not confident of winning this weapon refinement competition? No. Dao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. Among my 3 disciples, Yu Hanyun is the one with the highest attainments in weapon refinement. However, she's still slightly inferior to that genius of Hellfire Hall. Hakka Dojin frowned. If he recovered his body, he could naturally step forward and challenge again as a weapon refinement grandmaster. However, 3 months was too short and he could not reconstruct his body in time. Hakka Dojin instinctively looked at Su Zimo beside him. At that moment, Su Zimo's mind was filled with thoughts of how to kill Di'in and he did not notice Hakka Dojin's gaze. Hakka Dojin glanced at Su Zimo and shook his head with a bitter smile. Zimo has only just started refining dermic weapons and hasn't even refined a single dermic weapon before. How can he compare to Yu Hanyun? While Hakka Dojin looked at Su Zimo, Dao Lord Scarlet Star was also sizing up Su Zimo and guessing Su Zimo's identity and background. Initially, he thought that Su Zimo was just an ordinary Jinying Jinjuan. Now that he saw how Hakka Dojin trusted Su Zimo, he muttered internally and was puzzled. He did not know what their relationship was. Hakka Dojin pondered for a long time but could not figure it out. Hence, he said, let's talk about this in the future. Who's the patriarch of the sect now? It's senior brother White Flames, Dao Lord Scarlet Star replied. Hakka Dojin smiled gently. So, it's him. Back when I left, he was still a brat. I'll return to the sect to take a look. Settle Mo Ling down first. Hakka Dojin instructed Dao Lord Scarlet Star before turning to Su Zimo. The Thousand Crane Tea Party will be in 3 months. If you're not in a hurry, you can stay in 100 Refinement Sect for a period of time and attend the tea party with 100 Refinement Sect. Alright, Su Zimo nodded in agreement. Now that he knew that Ji Qingtian, Leng Ro, and the others were fine, he was in no hurry to meet his old friends. The Thousand Crane Tea Party would be in 3 months and he would naturally be able to meet everyone. Hakka Dojin had yet to gather all the materials for forging his body. If he stayed in 100 Refinement Sect, he might be able to help. Frowning slightly, Dao Lord Scarlet Star pointed at Su Zimo and could not help but ask, Grandmaster, who is this lad? Do I have to make arrangements personally? In Dao Lord Scarlet Star's opinion, he was the Dharma Dao Jun after all. how could he be reduced to arranging accommodations for a nascent soul realm lad? Haka-Adojin said indifferently, call him Uncle Master. With that said, Haka-Adojin retracted the surrounding flame barrier and transformed into a streak of light, disappearing into the void instantly. What? Dao Lord Scarlet Star was stunned. Uncle Master? Dao Lord Scarlet Star glared at Su Zimo unblinkingly with widened eyes, as though he wanted to devour Su Zimo. Su Zimo coughed gently awkwardly. He had just joined Haka-Adojin's sect and was indeed a little young. He was truly not used to having a disciple-nephew of the Dharma Dao Jun all of a sudden. Nangong Ling and the other two discussed softly on the spot, speculating about various possibilities. However, in a moment of carelessness, the flame barrier beside them disappeared and a red light flashed before their eyes. The three of them did not pay attention to it. Immediately after, the three of them saw their master and the unknown Jining Jinjuan standing face to face, staring at each other. Both of them remained silent and the atmosphere was strange. What was going on? Nangong Ling and the other two were confused. Master? Nangong Ling called out softly. Dao Lord Scarlet Star frowned and felt that something was amiss the more he thought about it. The lad before him was only at the nascent soul realm and was more than 100 years old. How could he be the uncle master of an old monster who was more than 5,000 years old? How was that possible? Grandmaster must be muddle-headed and said something wrong. However, he seemed to have heard the word Uncle Master. Dao Lord Scarlet Star was conflicted. Right then, he heard Nangong Ling's voice and his eyes lit up as he slapped his forehead in realization. Grandmaster didn't ask me to address this person as Uncle Master. Instead, he asked my three disciples to address him as Uncle Master. In that case, Mo Ling is my little junior brother. Yes, that's right, that must be the case. Dao Lord Scarlet Star was delighted after straightening out the relationship. Nangong Ling felt goosebumps when she saw Dao Lord Scarlet Star frowning in deep thought and laughing foolishly. She could not help but ask, Master, who is this Mo Ling? Dao Lord Scarlet Star waved his hand. Call him Uncle Master. Chapter 903. Ah. Nangong Ling and the other two were confused and looked at Dao Lord Scarlet Star with widened eyes. How did this person appear out of nowhere and become their Uncle Master? Could he be any more perfunctory? Nangong Ling scratched her head and laughed dryly. Master, can we stop joking? Who is this fellow Taoist? How does he know the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra? Who's joking with you? Dao Lord Scarlet Star rolled his eyes and pointed at Su Zimo. The reason why he knows the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra is because he's my junior brother. Nangong Ling and the other two were dumbfounded. They were not fools. It was clear that Dao Lord Scarlet Star and Su Zimo did not know each other previously. How did they become fellow disciples in the blink of an eye? Ru Xian leaned forward and said with a grin, Master, stop fooling around. You're already at the Dharma characteristic realm and your junior brother is only a nascent soul realm cultivator. Who would believe that? Dao Lord Scarlet Star was stunned by the question as well. Immediately after, Dao Lord Scarlet Star glared at Ru Xian and hollered, Stop smiling cheekily. Ru Xian pouted and retreated. With a stern expression, Dao Lord Scarlet Star said in a deep voice, It's normal for junior brother's cultivation realm to not be high. That's because he hasn't cultivated for long. My junior brother is only in his 140s and is younger than all of you. Ru Xian and the others could not tell Su Zimo's age but Dao Lord Scarlet Star could. Nangong Ling and the other two were dumbfounded. Su Zimo had a rough appearance and was steady in his actions. He should be at least a few hundred years old, to think that he was only slightly more than 100 years old. 100 years old seemed like a long time. However, Jining Jinjuan had a lifespan of 1,000 years. If it was a mortal with a lifespan of 100 years, Su Zimo was equivalent to a teenager. Jining Jinjuan, who was over 100 years old, was equivalent to a teenager in the mortal world. Moreover, Su Zimo was at the late stage of the nascent soul realm. His cultivation speed was already quite terrifying. Nangong Ling and the other two were all more than 200 years old. They were all older than Su Zimo, but they had only reached the early stage of the nascent soul realm. They were all rare geniuses. Among them, Nangong Ling was ranked 83rd on the phenomenon ranking. Before this, although Su Zimo's methods were very powerful, Nangong Ling did not think much of it. In his opinion, as long as he could cultivate to the late stage of the nascent soul realm, he would definitely be stronger than Su Zimo. However, he didn't expect that he had already lost. What Nangong Ling and the other two, including Tao Lord Scarlet Star, did not know was that the reason why Su Zimo was only at late-stage nascent soul realm after cultivating for more than 100 years was because he had cultivated 2 essence spirits. Furthermore, the black-haired essence spirit had to cultivate and comprehend 2 top-tier cultivation techniques of the immortal and Buddhist sects. Although the cultivation techniques were powerful, they consumed twice the amount of time. Furthermore, during this period of time, at least half of the power of Su Zimo's essence spirit was used to nourish Qinglian. The speed of his cultivation had slowed down imperceptibly. Otherwise, he might have reached his current realm before he was even 100 years old. In reality, in terms of seniority, Su Zimo was Hakka Dojin's disciple, which meant that he was the junior brother of Tao Lord Heavenheart, Tao Lord Scarlet Star's master. In that case, he was indeed Tao Lord Scarlet Star's uncle master. Su Zimo smiled and watched everything quietly without correcting them. Tao Lord Scarlet Star had lived for more than 5,000 years and might not be able to figure out the relationship between the two. He might just find it hard to accept. After all, he had a noble status in 100 Refinement sect and was the sect master of the Extreme Fire lineage. Su Zimo was more than 100 years old and in his eyes, he was a brat who was still wet behind the ears. Now that this brat was suddenly above him and became his uncle master, how was he going to survive in the sect in the future? Every time he saw Su Zimo, he would have to bow to Su Zimo and address him as uncle master. The thought of it drove him crazy. Su Zimo did not expose Tao Lord Scarlet Star after he pretended to be confused. After all, he was indifferent to matters of seniority. His temperament was free and unrestrained, and he didn't have many rules. Furthermore, he was indeed too young. If Tao Lord Scarlet Star, an old monster who was more than 5,000 years old, bowed to him every day and addressed him as Uncle Master, he would feel embarrassed. He's only more than 100 years old. Ru Xian circled Su Zimo and was speechless. Why do I feel like he's an old man who's 700 to 800 years old? Su Zimo smiled indifferently and did not refute. Now that he had changed his appearance, he did indeed look much more mature after the disguise. Yu Hanyun, on the other hand, did not say anything the entire time. She only stole glances at Su Zimo occasionally with a hint of curiosity in her eyes. When Nangong Ling noticed that, she was even more anxious. He admired Yu Hanyun and even followed her into 100 Refinement sect. After what happened today, Nangong Ling felt that she had embarrassed herself in front of her beloved and was even stolen by this person who appeared out of nowhere. That was the reason why Nangong Ling targeted Su Zimo. She did not have any ill intentions. Initially, Nangong Ling was thinking about how she could perform in front of Yu Hanyun in the future and compete with Mo Ling. Great, this person suddenly became their uncle master, what's there to compete for? Nangong Ling mumbled internally, he's a level higher in seniority and he's going to crush me to death. Nangong Ling felt upset when she thought about how Mo Ling had to address him respectfully as uncle master every time they met. Furthermore, this uncle master was even younger than her. No matter how she thought about it, something was amiss. If this person was Tao Lord Scarlet Star's junior brother, who was his master? Their grandmaster and uncle masters were experts who had died a long time ago. Nangong Ling asked carefully, Master, why haven't I heard you mention that you have a junior brother before? Do I have to tell you kids everything about me? Tao Lord Scarlet Star glanced sideways at Nangong Ling and pointed at Su Zimo. This is my long-lost junior brother. Why? Can't I? Sure, sure. Nan Gongling hurriedly echoed with a smile. Immediately, his eyes darted around and he asked, then, Uncle Master Mo Ling's master is, Nan Gongling was prepared to get to the bottom of it. However, before she could finish, she was glared at by Tao Lord Scarlet Star. With a stern expression, Tao Lord Scarlet Star said in a deep voice, all right, stop asking. You just have to remember that Mo Ling is your Uncle Master. The three of you settle Uncle Master down properly and accompany him around the sect when you're free. I'll be leaving first. Tao Lord Scarlet Star's head hurt from the questions and was afraid that he would spill the beans. After instructing, he imitated Hakka Dojin and turned to leave, leaving Nan Gongling and the other two who were exchanging glances. Nan Gongling had a stomach full of questions and huffed without saying anything, looking at Su Zimo indignantly. Ru Xian's huge eyes darted around as though she was scheming something. Yu Hanyun was still the most composed. Smiling gently, she came before Su Zimo and bowed. Yu Hanyun of the extreme fire lineage greets Uncle Master Mo Ling. Yes, Su Zimo nodded with a smile. Slapping his storage bag, he took out a rusty flying sword and handed it over. Consider it a small gift. Take it. TSK. When Nan Gongling saw that the flying sword was ordinary and tattered, she could not help but purse her lips and mutter, you're trying to fool me with a lousy flying sword? And you call yourself Uncle Master? Yu Hanyun did not reply and took the flying sword and injected dermic powers. Buzz! The flying sword trembled gently as though it was alive with a sharp sword chi. The rust peeled off layer by layer and 5 bedazzling lights shone from the sword, almost blinding Nan Gongling. 5 dermic patterns, a perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. Chapter 904. F***ck, Nan Gongling's lips quivered and she nearly bit her tongue. He was way too generous. Perfect grade dermic weapons were extremely rare at the end of the day. Although they were disciples of the largest weapon refinement sect in Tianhuang mainland and were knowledgeable, they had never seen someone give away perfect dermic weapons so casually. His expression and casualness were as though he was throwing away cabbage by the roadside. Ru Xian's reaction was even more intense as she jumped up from the spot and ran to Su Zimo's side. Before Su Zimo could react, Ru Xian had already tugged at his sleeves and shouted sweetly, Little Uncle Master, Little Uncle Master, Little Uncle Master. It was as though she would not let go or stop until Su Zimo took out the gift. Su Zimo flipped his palm and waved it in front of Ru Xian. Ru Xian's big eyes immediately widened and her gaze froze. It was a scarlet bead with a cloud-like pattern floating on it. It was extremely mysterious. Although the bead was not a dermic weapon, Nan Gongling and Yu Hanyun revealed envious expressions. This was a fire cloud bead. For cultivators who cultivated fire elemental cultivation techniques, it would yield twice the results with half the effort. The fire cloud bead was extremely rare and was a consumable item. If it was placed in an auction house, its price would not be lower than a perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. Thank you, Little Uncle Master. Ru Xian hurriedly took the fire cloud pearl and could not bear to part with it as she shouted happily. Ru Xian had already thought it through. In any case, she would have to acknowledge this Uncle Master sooner or later. It was not as though she would die from calling him Uncle Master. Most importantly, there were treasures to be obtained. Furthermore, this Uncle Master seemed to be very generous and silly. If she were to bluff him in the future, she might be able to obtain more treasures. How could she know that Su Zimo truly did not feel the pinch when he gave away those 2 items? He had many treasures on him and even had a few perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapons. Most importantly, such treasures were no longer worthy of his attention. Although perfected Lord dermic weapons were rare, Su Zimo could shatter them with ease if he summoned Creation Qinglian. Creation Qinglian's current might was comparable to a Khanate Taoist dermic artifact. Seeing that Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian were both holding treasures, Nan Gongling's eyes turned red. She could not stay still. They had just stepped into the nascent soul realm and did not have any perfected Lord Dermic artifacts. Furthermore, the more such treasures there were, the better. With one more perfected Lord Dermic artifact, his combat strength would increase by another level. Nangong Ling was a little bashful. Reluctantly, she came to Su Zimo's side. Turning her head, she called out softly, "Young martial uncle." Su Zimo pretended not to hear clearly and asked with a faint smile, "What did you say?" Nangong Ling was infuriated. He was so angry that his teeth itched. Ru Xian, who was at the side, gloated non-stop. A real man knows when to yield and when not. "I'll bear with it." Nangong Ling lamented internally, "When my cultivation and strength surpass yours in the future, let's see how you'll still have the cheek to be my uncle master." At that thought, Nangong Ling straightened her neck and shouted with an expression as though she was going all out, "I'm Nangong Ling, greetings, young martial uncle. Please bestow me a gift, young martial uncle." Nangong Ling thought that since she was already shameless, she might as well be shameless to the end and ask for things brazenly. Furthermore, he had other intentions. The reason why she addressed Su Zimo as young martial uncle was to remind him that she was young and not qualified enough. Su Zimo looked at Nangong Ling meaningfully, as though he could read her mind. Su Zimo nodded with a smile. "Good, disciple nephew. How obedient." Nangong Ling was so angry that she nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. As Su Zimo said, he took out a black object from his storage bag and handed it to Nangong Ling. Nangong Ling focused her gaze and her eyes were filled with disappointment and anger. That black object was the black shield that Wu Yuan used to defend against Su Zimo just now. Nangong Ling witnessed with her own eyes how the black shield was sent flying by Su Zimo's bare hands, and Wu Yuan was shocked half to death. It was clear that the black shield was useless and was trash. "Humph, Uncle Master. You only know how to fool people." Nangong Ling took the black shield, feeling indignant as he muttered non-stop. Su Zimo said indifferently, "If you don't like it, I'll give you another one." "There's no need." When she heard Su Zimo say that, Nangong Ling shook her head hurriedly. "Another one might not even be as good as this black shield." Nangong Ling took another look at the black shield and exclaimed softly. She gradually realized that there was something strange about it. The shield was not a dermic weapon but the bone of some demon beast. That was the reason why there were no dermic patterns. Nangong Ling knocked on it again and her eyes lit up in delight. If she was not wrong, the black shield should be made from the bone of a mid-level fiend demon. Its defense was definitely comparable to a perfected Lord Dermic weapon. She had struck gold. Delighted, Nangong Ling accepted the black shield hurriedly. In reality, Nangong Ling did not know the power of Su Zimo's punch. Although Su Zimo did not use his full strength, the fact that it could withstand his punch without shattering meant that the shield was a treasure. The three of them were naturally delighted after obtaining treasures. Ru Xian interrupted, "Little Uncle Master, let's return to the sect. I'll show you around." "All right," Su Zimo nodded. Ru Xian led the way in front while Su Zimo followed behind. Yu Hanyun was half a body behind symbolically while Nangong Ling stood beside Yu Hanyun. "Hanyan, it's all Wu Yuan's fault for summoning that formation." Nangong Ling sent a voice transmission secretly. "If not for the restriction of that formation, I'll definitely be able to kill my way out with you guys. Ruyan, little Uncle Master only has a higher cultivation realm. When I cultivate to late-stage nascent soul, I'll definitely be stronger than him." Along the way, Nangong Ling pestered Yu Hanyun and tried her best to prove herself. Yu Hanyun smiled without saying anything. On the other side, Ru Xian's attention was completely focused on Su Zimo. "Little Uncle Master, where are you from?" "I'm from the Middle Continent." "Little Uncle Master, you're lying. Just now, you clearly said that you're from the outer region." Is that so?" "Then, you're from the outer region." "Little Uncle Master, you're patronizing me." Ru Xian expressed immense curiosity towards Su Zimo and wanted nothing more than to interrogate him about his ancestors. On the other hand, Su Zimo was distracted and dealt with it casually. "Little Uncle Master, what's with that golden flame that you just now condensed?" Ru Xian could not help but ask. "We're all cultivating the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. Why is your flame golden and much more powerful?" This time round, even Nangong Ling and Yu Hanyun turned around and listened intently. Just now, the golden flame that Su Zimo summoned with a flick of his finger was way too shocking. It was only the size of a fist, but it suppressed the raging hellfire instantly. Furthermore, the golden flame was sacred and flawless, completely different from the aura of the Tao fire that they cultivated. At that moment, Su Zimo fell into deep thought as well, recalling the situation just now. The reason why the golden flame was different from Nangong Ling and the other two was because it was one of the Samadhi Tao fires that he cultivated, the Buddhist Tao fire. Chapter 905. Ever since he thought of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Samadhi Tao fire, Su Zimo had already begun to cultivate in that direction and comprehend it. Although the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra was considered an immortal cultivation technique, the first thing that Su Zimo comprehended was the Buddhist Tao fire. That was logical as well. The black-haired essence spirit was fused with the sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries, the Saraka flower. However, the Saraka flower was a flower of flames to begin with. Furthermore, Su Zimo cultivated the top cultivation techniques of the Buddhist monasteries. Be it the Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra or the Great Day Rulai Sutra, they were both supreme secret sutras of the Buddhist monasteries. At the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo comprehended the Tao and chanted sutras for 20 years, accumulating an extremely solid foundation. It was only logical for him to be able to condense the Buddhist Tao fire. The scene that Nangong Ling and the other two saw was Su Zimo fighting against Wu Yuan. With a casual snap of his fingers, he condensed the Buddhist Tao fire in a seemingly casual manner. However, what the three of them could not see was that in Su Zimo's consciousness, a black-haired essence spirit was chanting sutras continuously. The phantom of a gigantic Buddha appeared and Sanskrit reverberated. It was vast and sacred, lasting for a long time and deafening. The black-haired essence spirit had already deduced the immortal cultivation technique to its limits before condensing that golden Buddhist Tao fire. The hellfire that Wu Yuan cultivated was sinister and dark in nature. Legend has it that the limits of the hellfire originated from the sinister hell beneath the 9 netherworlds. If the Tao fire of the immortal sects were to fight against the hellfire, it would be hard to say who would win. However, the Tao fire of the Buddhist monasteries was sacred and flawless. It was vast and could suppress the 9 netherworlds and transcend the netherworld. It was a natural counter to the hellfire. Therefore, the moment the hellfire clashed with the Tao fire of the Buddhist monasteries, the hellfire was suppressed. As he chatted with Ru Xian, the four of them arrived at 100 Refinement sect unknowingly. At the entrance of the sect stood a gigantic tripod that was dozens of feet tall. It looked majestic and spectacular. Su Zimo's group of 4 arrived at the entrance of the sect and looked up at the gigantic tripod, feeling how insignificant they were. There were many 100 Refinement sect cultivators guarding the mountain gate. Most of them were at the Foundation establishment realm, and there were also 2 or 3 perfected Jin Dan. When the cultivators saw Nangong Ling and the other two, they all showed respect and cupped their fists in salute. "Greetings, Senior Brother Nangong, Senior Sister Lu, and Senior Sister Ru Xian. Senior Brother, Senior Sister is back. Did your trip go smoothly?" Although Ru Xian was chattering like a child in front of Su Zimo, Ru Xian was still a child. In front of these sect disciples, she behaved normally and restrained herself. "You guys can disperse. There's nothing else." Ru Xian pretended to be a senior sister and waved her sleeves with an indifferent expression. Everyone obeyed and left. One of the Taoist masters, Jin Dan, glanced at Su Zimo and asked curiously, "Who is this Taoist friend?" Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian did not react. Nangong Ling, on the other hand, looked embarrassed. He was already extremely unwilling to acknowledge Su Zimo as his uncle master to begin with and was even more afraid that others would know about it. When he heard that person's question, Nangong Ling's face darkened and he snapped, "Why are you asking so much? Go back and guard the sect properly." Ugh, the person was scolded and looked confused, not knowing where he had gone wrong. When Nangong Ling saw that the person was still not leaving, he glared and said coldly, "Why? Do I have to report to you that I brought someone back? And no need." The person shrunk his neck and retreated hurriedly. Su Zimo found it funny and did not interfere. After the four of them entered 100 Refinement Sect, Nangong Ling was afraid that he would encounter someone familiar and ask him the same question again. As such, he found an excuse and fled. With Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian accompanying him, the three of them were unobstructed along the way. However, during this period of time, they attracted the attention of many cultivators with envious gazes. 100 Refinement Sect was unlike Elixir Yang Sect and Chiguramon. 100 Refinement Sect was refined using cauldrons and was tempered thousands of times. Most of the people in the sect were men and there were very few women. As for Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian, they were rare beauties. Be it the junior brothers below or the senior brothers above, many of them admired the two of them. When they saw the two of them accompanying a burly man on a tour of the sect, everyone felt as though they were chewing on peonies. "Who is that? I've never seen him before. He looks unfamiliar. For some reason, I feel like beating him up when I see him like that." Although these people's voices were soft, Su Zimo could hear them clearly. He just smiled and didn't seem to care. He had already completed his mission by sending Hakka Dojin safely. 3 months later, he would be attending the 1,000 Crane Tea Party and would not be able to stay in 100 Refinement Sect for long. Even if someone was unhappy, there would not be any conflict. 100 Refinement Sect was indeed a major sect with a long history and its foundation far surpassed Misty Peak. Immortal mountains towered within the sect and green waters surrounded them. The buildings were majestic and ancient. Every single brick and tile was crafted extremely meticulously and could be said to be of uncanny craftsmanship. There were many different types of buildings in the sect and they were filled with a metallic texture. Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian brought Su Zimo around before settling down in a cave abode. In the following period of time, Su Zimo rarely left his cave abode. He merely took out the heaven-slaying sword art and tried to comprehend it every day. This sword art was not to be underestimated. If he could comprehend it as soon as possible, his combat strength would increase tremendously. Although he rarely left his cave abode, Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian came over often. Su Zimo could sense that the two women were extremely curious about him. However, it was written all over Ru Xian's face. As for Yu Hanyun, she hid it deep in her heart. During this period of time, through the conversation between the two women, Su Zimo deduced that 100 Refinement Sect had already done everything they could to prepare for Hakka Dojin to reconstruct his body. According to the two women, many experts of the sect had come out of seclusion during this period of time. From void reversions to the Dharma Dao Jun, experts of the sect would often head out to gather top-grade materials. In fact, the two women heard that even conjoint body mighty figures of the sect had come out for unknown reasons. Experts of 100 Refinement Sect also made frequent moves and spent huge sums of money to purchase rare spirit materials at the various trading complexes and auction houses. There were also cultivators who bought large amounts of spirit medicine liquids from Elixir Yang Sect. Hakka Dojin's return was still a secret. At the very least, Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian did not know the reason. Su Zimo had not expected that Hakka Dojin, who was only a Dharma characteristic expert, would be valued so highly by 100 Refinement Sect after 5,000 years. In fact, even conjoint body mighty figures of the sect came out for him. For the first time, Su Zimo realized that Hakka Dojin was not simple. He was happy for Hakka Dojin but at the same time, he was worried. The stronger Hakka Dojin was, the more this news could not be leaked. That was because if anyone heard that Hakka Dojin had come back to life, they would definitely have ulterior motives. Not everyone wanted Hakka Dojin to be alive. 3 months later, it would be the 1,000 Crane Tea Party and a weapon refinement competition. It was as though everything was happening at the same time. Although the cultivation world was still considered peaceful right now, Su Zimo could sense that a storm was brewing. Chapter 906. 2 months later, Hellfire Hall. In a cold and gloomy hall, only a few candles flickering between light and darkness. A figure sat high and mighty in the middle, looking down at a Hellfire Hall cultivator below. Hall Master. The Hellfire Hall cultivator knelt on one knee and said in a deep voice, "There has been a huge commotion in 100 Refinement sect for the past 2 months. There are traces of 100 Refinement sect cultivators in the various bazaars and auction houses, buying many treasures and elixirs in a frenzy. I wonder what they're for." Sitting at the top was the Hellfire Hall's Hall Master. Oh. The Hellfire Hall's Hall Master was expressionless as he asked indifferently, "What treasures are they?" The Hellfire Hall cultivator said, 40 days ago, a cultivator saw Tao Lord Tian Xing of 100 Refinement sect appear at the Wind Cloud auction house and buy a sun stone." The Hellfire Hall's Hall Master frowned. "A month ago, I heard from Elixir Yang sect cultivators that the Patriarch of 100 Refinement sect appeared and bought many blood coagulation elixirs, spirit flesh elixirs and a large amount of life spirit spring water from their sect." After a brief pause, the person continued, "A few days ago, there were rumors outside that someone saw a conjoint body mighty figure of 100 Refinement sect appear in exchange for a heavenly dipper stone at a certain bazaar." Swoosh! Suddenly, 2 balls of flames burned in the eyes of the Hellfire Hall's Hall Master, dark, cold and sinister. Instantly, the atmosphere in the hall turned sinister and terrifying. The Hellfire Hall cultivator knelt on the ground in silence. A moment later, a voice sounded from just now. "Are there any other unusual movements from 100 Refinement sect?" "And no." The person's voice trembled slightly. The Hellfire Hall's Hall Master asked again, "Have you found out the identity of the cultivator who killed Wu Yuan and the others 2 months ago?" "Not yet." The Hellfire Hall cultivator gulped and said, "I heard from our spies in 100 Refinement sect that the cultivator has been living in seclusion ever since he entered the sect and hasn't shown himself much. Occasionally, that person would appear and read an ancient scroll, engrossed in it. He seems like a bookworm." "Bookworm?" The Hellfire Hall's master's voice was cold as he said coldly, "Wu Yuan and the other 10 died in the hands of a bookworm?" The Hellfire Hall cultivator was sweating profusely and did not dare to make a sound. The voice of the Hellfire Hall master seemed to come from the depths of hell, cold and bone-piercing. "After 2 months of investigation, you only told me that this person is a bookworm and nothing else?" Yes, yes, yes." The cultivator of Hellfire Hall nodded repeatedly. "That person's name is Mo Ling. He's at the late-stage nascent soul realm. I heard that he's only 100 years old. Furthermore, and what?" Just as the Hellfire Hall cultivator hesitated for a moment, the voice of the Hellfire Hall master sounded. It was as though he was right beside his ears, sending chills down his spine. The Hellfire Hall cultivator shuddered and said hurriedly, "Furthermore, I heard that Yu Hanyan and Ru Xian of 100 Refinement sect are extremely close to this person. They seem to call him Uncle Master, Martial Uncle." The Hellfire Hall master frowned slightly. How was this possible? If Yu Hanyan called this person Uncle Master, it meant that this person was a cultivator of the same generation as Tao Lord Scarlet Star. He had seen almost all the cultivators of that generation. How could there be a Jining Jinjuan who was more than 100 years old? Our spies don't dare to get too close. The Hellfire Hall cultivator continued, "Furthermore, he said that every time he spies on this person from afar, this person seems to be able to sense it. He will glance in his direction intentionally or unintentionally. Jining Jinjuan is more than 100 years old and he has such a high seniority." "Fufu, interesting." The Hellfire Hall master laughed. "You may leave first and continue monitoring 100 Refinement sect." "Understood." The Hellfire Hall cultivator retreated as though he had been pardoned. The hall returned to silence once more. A moment later, the voice of the Hellfire Hall master sounded slowly, Sunstone, Heavenly Dipper's Stone, Blood-congealing Pill, Spirit Spring of Life, is someone trying to refine their bones and body? There's no mistake. These items are all top-notch bone-tempering materials. A hunched figure walked out slowly from the darkness behind the Hellfire Hall master. The person had white hair and a white beard. His eyes were turbid and his voice was old. He exuded an aura of twilight and was on the verge of death, as though he could pass away at any moment. The Hellfire Hall master seemed to have known that this person was behind him and was not surprised at all. I'm just curious as to who it is that could alarm so many cultivators of 100 Refinement sect and cause such a huge commotion such that even a conjoint body mighty figure would come out for him. After a moment of silence, the Hellfire Hall master shook his head. No matter how I thought about it, I couldn't find a single person with such capabilities. Uncle Yu, can you think of anything? The Hellfire Hall master glanced sideways and asked the old man beside him. Uncle Yu shook his head. I don't know. Pausing for a moment, Uncle Yu said, should we use our factions to secretly disrupt 100 Refinement sect's search for materials? There's no need, the Hellfire Hall master shook his head with disdain in his eyes. These materials are used to refine a Dao Lord's body. Even if any Dao Lord reconstructs his body, he won't be a threat to us. The Hellfire Hall master exuded a heroic aura as he waved his hand and said in a deep voice, in a month's time, 100 Refinement sect will suffer a crushing defeat at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Even if 100 Refinement sect has another conjoint body mighty figure, it won't help, let alone a Dharma Dao Jun. Uncle Yu nodded as well. That's right. Although Yu Hanyan of 100 Refinement sect is not weak in weapon refinement, he's still much inferior to Ming Han. 100 Refinement sect will definitely lose this weapon refinement battle. The Hellfire Hall master said proudly, my disciple will naturally not lose. After a moment, the Hellfire Hall master seemed to have thought of something and sighed faintly. Are you still thinking about the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra, Hall master? Uncle Yu asked. That's right, the Hellfire Hall master clenched his fist slightly. That's a sore point for me. I have to obtain that cultivation technique. Right now, there are only 4 people who know of this cultivation technique. Uncle Yu said, Dao Lord Scarlet Star is not easy to deal with. Even if we capture him, he'll probably be like his master and refuse to say anything. Why don't we start with his 3 disciples? Yes, the Hellfire Hall master said, I've already sent out a group of void reversions to wait for an opportunity. This time round, we have to capture Nangong Ling and the other 2 alive. However, the Hellfire Hall master frowned and continued, there's something strange about that Mo Ling. I have a feeling that there will be some variables with him. Uncle Yu bowed slightly. If you're worried, I'll make a trip for you personally, Hall master. Uncle Yu, you don't have much lifespan left. It's not good to trouble you with such a small matter, right? Although the Hellfire Hall master rejected verbally, his eyes flickered and he was clearly tempted. It's fine, Uncle Yu said indifferently, I don't have much time left. Instead of waiting for death, I might as well make a trip for you and eliminate any variables. Ha 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 ha. The Hellfire Hall master reared his head in laughter. Good, good, good. Back then, you were also the famous Dharma Dao Jun of Tianhuang mainland. Although you're at the end of your lifespan, your combat strength is still there. With Uncle Yu around, it doesn't matter if Mo Ling is Jinying Jinjuan or a void reversion, he'll have to surrender. Chapter 907 100 Refinement Sect. For the past 2 months, Su Zimo had spent most of his time comprehending the heaven-slaying sword art and immersing himself in it. On the surface, the heaven-slaying sword art looked like the most ordinary ancient scroll and was nothing special. If he had not known beforehand, Su Zimo would not have thought that this ancient scroll would be related to the 3 legendary ancient sword arts. Furthermore, it was difficult to store the heaven-slaying sword art in his storage bag. After thinking about it, Su Zimo did the opposite and took it out to cultivate and comprehend it openly. Even if someone bumped into him, Su Zimo would never hide it. He held the heaven-slaying sword art in his hands and comprehended it on his own, ignoring everyone else. Therefore, in the eyes of many cultivators, although Su Zimo looked boorish, he was like a bookworm of the mortal world. No one would have thought that Su Zimo, who held an ancient scroll all day and never avoided it, was actually cultivating and comprehending a shocking ancient sword art. Logically speaking, if it was a powerful cultivation technique or secret skill, anyone would find a secret place to cultivate it, afraid that others would see it. Who would be like Su Zimo, who was so open and unrestrained? Although he held the heaven-slaying sword art all day, he was not worried that others would see its contents. That was because every time he comprehended this ancient scroll, Su Zimo would look at it with his right eye that contained the illumination stone. If he looked with his left eye, he would only see a blazing light and his vision would turn white without being able to see anything. Even so, Su Zimo would feel a piercing pain if he looked at it with his right eye for too long. At that moment, he had to stop and rest. He would leave his cave abode for a casual walk and look into the distance to relax his eyes. During this period of time, Nangong Ling rarely came to his place, as though she was holding back her energy and wanted to surpass him as soon as possible. On the other hand, Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian came often. Ru Xian was carefree and had a cheerful personality. She would talk about everything that happened in and out of the sect during this period of time and gossip as though she was familiar with them. Yu Hanyun had a quiet temperament and rarely spoke. She only came over to sit with him. Su Zimo could feel Yu Hanyun's nervousness and worry. In a few days, it would be the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. At the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, there would be a weapon refinement competition between 100 Refinement Sect and Hellfire Hall that everyone would be watching. As the representative of 100 Refinement Sect, although she looked calm, she was under immense pressure and tried her best to suppress the anxiety in her heart. Every time Yu Hanyun looked over, Su Zimo would return a smile, his gaze clear and gentle. At this time, Su Zimo would secretly recite a Buddhist scripture to calm the mind and calm the mind. His body would then emit a mass of peaceful qi, which would gradually calm Yu Hanyun's fluctuating mind. In fact, this was an invisible aura. Legend has it that a butcher who killed people like Scything Flax would put down his butcher's knife when he saw a senior monk with profound dharma. That was the logic behind being able to wash away the killing intent in one's body after following an eminent monk for a long time. Su Zimo felt apologetic. Although he was Hakuya Dojin's disciple, he did not know much about forging dermic weapons and was far inferior to Yu Hanyun, who had been cultivating in 100 Refinement Sect since she was young. He couldn't help much in this matter. All he could do was let Lu Hanyun relax and help her adjust her state of mind as much as possible. This day, Su Zimo was comprehending the heaven-slaying sword art in his cave abode when there was a knock on the door. Thereafter, the door to his cave abode was pushed open. Without even looking, Su Zimo could guess that it was Ru Xian. "Little Uncle Master, I'm here to see you again." Before she arrived, Ru Xian's voice sounded. Su Zimo gradually snapped out of his enlightenment and looked up. Not only was Yu Hanyun beside Ru Xian, Nangong Ling was here as well. Furthermore, she looked a little reluctant. "Little Uncle Master, you're still reading?" Ru Xian asked casually. Suddenly, she leaned forward and looked at the ancient book in Su Zimo's hands. "What's written inside?" Over the past few days, when Ru Xian saw that Su Zimo was glued to the book, she did not mind at first, but later on, she became more curious. Now that she was here to ambush him, she wanted to see what was written in the ancient book for Su Zimo to be immersed in it. In the end, Ru Xian was disappointed. The ancient book was completely white, as though there was nothing. Ru Xian frowned and was about to focus when she felt a sharp pain in her eyes. She exclaimed and took 2 steps back. Unknowingly, 2 streams of tears flowed from her eyes. This time round, Ru Xian was shocked. For a moment earlier on, she felt that she would go blind if she continued staring at the ancient book. Ru Xian looked at Su Zimo with a hint of fear. She had merely taken a single look and was already in such a state. It was truly hard to imagine how her little uncle master managed to survive by staring at the ancient book all day. Why? Is something the matter? Su Zimo asked when he saw that the three of them were present. Ru Xian said hurriedly, the wind cloud gathering has already begun. Let's go take a look. I've been bored to death in the sect for the past 2 months. A month before the Thousand Crane Tea Party, there would be a large-scale gathering every day in Wind Cloud City in the middle of the 4 unorthodox groups. Apart from the 4 unorthodox groups, the super sects, aristocratic families, and itinerant cultivators of the Middle Continent would also gather here. The Wind Cloud gathering would last for a month until the Thousand Crane Tea Party was held. At this gathering, there would be many treasures, elixirs, ancient secret skills, remnant spirit beasts, divine weapons. The cultivation world had everything that one could wish for. Cultivators participating in the Thousand Crane Tea Party would usually come to Wind Cloud City to take a look and see if they could buy what they needed. Or perhaps, they would find some dusty treasures. To put it simply, they were there to pick up scraps. All these years, at every Wind Cloud gathering, there would be dusty treasures that would be discovered and envied by others. Su Zimo frowned slightly. If this was any other time, it would be nothing much for him to take a look at the Wind Cloud gathering. However, at that moment, a storm was brewing and countless pairs of eyes were staring at 100 Refinements sect. It was truly unwise for Yu Hanyan and the other two to leave the sect at this time. Forget it, Su Zimo shook his head. I remember that Tao Lord Scarlet Star instructed you guys to stay in the sect for this period of time and not wander off. But I've been here for 2 months and I'm about to suffocate to death. Ru Xian pouted with an aggrieved expression. Nangong Ling raised her brows. Junior sister, don't worry. With me by your side, I won't let you be in any danger. Although some people in our sect are senior, they're extremely timid. Let's go. Nangong Ling was clearly referring to Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled indifferently and did not hold it against her. Nangong Ling adored Yu Hanyan. During this period of time, Yu Hanyan had been extremely close to him. It was clear that Nangong Ling had already viewed him as a rival and naturally wanted to compete with him in every aspect. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, if we're going to participate in the Wind Cloud gathering, the 3 of you won't be able to do it. You'll have to get a few seniors of the sect to accompany you. It's best if you have Dharma characteristic experts accompanying you. How is that possible? Ru Xian rolled her eyes. I don't know what happened to the sect recently, but the experts of the sect are all busy. Who has the time to accompany us to the gathering? Chapter 908. No. Su Zimo shook his head and said resolutely, it's too risky for the 3 of you to head out at this sensitive time without the seniors of the sect accompanying you. Although he was younger than Nangong Ling and the other 2, he was younger than them. However, his seniority was extremely high. He could not watch Nangong Ling and the other 2 take the risk. Furthermore, for the past 2 months, every time he looked at the heaven-slaying sword art for a long time and left his cave abode for a breather, he would feel that he was being spied on. If that person was a disciple of 100 Refinements sect, it would be fine if it was merely out of curiosity. However, if it was a spy planted in 100 Refinements sect by other sects or Hellfire Hall, their every move would be exposed. In other words, there was a high chance that they would be targeted the moment they left the sect. Little Uncle Master, it's fine. Ru Xian said coquettishly, Wind Cloud City is in the middle of the 4 unorthodox groups and isn't too far from our 100 Refinements sect. What danger can there be? Su Zimo was about to shake his head and reject her when he inadvertently looked up and saw Yu Hanyan standing beside him. Although this quiet woman didn't say anything, her eyes were looking at him with a trace of expectation in the depths of her eyes. Su Zimo's heart softened. Yu Hanyan had been under way too much pressure recently. This trip might be able to relieve her nervousness. At that thought, Su Zimo already had a plan. Nan Gongling looked at Su Zimo and harumphed. Who said that the seniors of the sect are all busy? Our little Uncle Master is rather free. Su Zimo stood up and said indifferently, all right, I'll accompany you guys out for a walk. Ah. This time round, it was Nan Gongling's turn to be shocked. Initially, he was just saying it casually to mock Su Zimo. Who would have thought that the latter would agree to it? Nan Gongling was filled with regret and grumbled. All right. Ru Xian clapped her hands and cheered with a smile. Even Yu Hanyan took a deep breath in relief. The sorrow on her face seemed to have faded a lot. With glittering eyes, she bowed at Su Zimo and said gently, thank you, senior uncle. I can accompany you to the gathering, but I have to remind you. Su Zimo's expression was solemn as he said in a deep voice, the three of you can play, but you can't leave within 10 meters of me. Can you do that? Yes. Ru Xian urged and tugged Su Zimo's sleeves, walking out while muttering, little Uncle Master, you're really naggy. Nan Gongling pursed her lips. She didn't think much of it. She muttered in a low voice, so what if he's within 3 feet of you? I can live forever. Before he could finish his sentence, Nan Gongling suddenly felt his neck tighten. His entire body was grabbed by the neck and lifted into the air. Who is it? Nan Gongling had a flustered expression and his face flushed red. His legs kicked wildly in midair and he felt his strength vanish without a trace. At this moment, a rough face appeared before his eyes. Su Zimo grabbed Nan Gongling with one hand and said with a fake smile, I can't guarantee you eternal life, but at the very least, I can protect your life. Why you, let go of me. Nan Gongling tried his best to channel his dermic powers and blood qi. However, for some reason, he could not muster any strength in Su Zimo's palm and could only allow the latter to carry him. Ha. Naturally, Ru Xian was fearless and burst into laughter. Nan Gongling felt even more embarrassed and almost fainted on the spot. All of a sudden, he felt his body loosen and he fell. He had regained his freedom. Enraged, Nan Gongling wanted to argue with Su Zimo. However, he realized that Su Zimo and the other two had already left the cave abode and were heading outside. Nan Gongling chased after them indignantly without saying anything. Su Zimo was his little Uncle Master after all. He could not possibly fight with Su Zimo in public. If his master were to find out about this, he would probably be chased out of the sect. When she arrived outside the sect, Ru Xian slapped her storage bag and summoned a spirit vessel that expanded rapidly. There was tea, water, and spirit fruits inside and everything one could possibly need. Little Uncle Master, let's go. With that said, Ru Xian jumped on first with Su Zimo and the others following closely behind. With the spirit vessel on the way, Su Zimo was free and bored. He took out the heaven-slaying sword art and continued cultivating. During this period of time, he was focused entirely on the heaven-slaying sword art. When he was tired, he would rest for a while before continuing. Su Zimo had a feeling that he was about to touch the surface of the sword art. The spirit vessel sped the entire way and only slowed down after half a day. Looking ahead, the outline of a gigantic city gradually became clearer on the horizon. Wind Cloud City. It was a gathering of the winds and clouds. Before they arrived at Wind Cloud City, there were already more cultivators in the vicinity. Some people rode on swords. Some people rode the wind. Some cultivators rode on auspicious clouds while some perfected lords rode on scarlet immortal cranes. After putting away the spirit vessel, Su Zimo's group of 4 descended into Wind Cloud City. The city was huge, and it was bustling with activity. Cultivators of various major sects and factions could be seen everywhere. Countless cultivator stalls were gathered on both sides of the road. Divine weapons could be seen everywhere. There was a dazzling array of ancient secret skills. There were all sorts of elixirs and talismans that were dazzling. Some cultivators were even more straightforward and did not care about their immortal demeanor as they shouted at the top of their lungs. It was rare for Yu Hanyan to be in a much better state at the sight of such a bustling scene, as though she was no longer under the pressure of the weapon refinement competition. Bouncing around, Ru Xian circled around every stall and fiddled with them curiously. However, she did not buy anything, causing countless people to roll their eyes. Nan Gongling followed behind Yu Hanyan blindly, paying attention to her sweetheart's gaze and preparing to help her purchase treasures at any moment. Su Zimo was still the same as always, following behind the three of them lazily with the heaven-slaying sword art in his hands. He was indeed comprehending the heaven-slaying sword art. However, at the same time, the scarlet-haired Ian's spirit hid in a corner of his consciousness and did not let down his guard, paying attention to his surroundings. Look over there. The paragon of soaring feather sect, Wu Tianyu, has appeared. Wu Tianyu, ranked 11th on the phenomenon ranking this time round. To think that he would arrive so early. Let's go take a look. I haven't seen what a cultivator ranked 11th on the phenomenon ranking looks like. Many cultivators discussed and surged in that direction. Cultivators on the phenomenon ranking were the center of attention no matter where they went. Fellow Daoist, may I ask if you're Nan Gongling, who's ranked 83 on the phenomenon ranking? Right then, a cultivator flashed out and asked Nan Gongling with cupped fists. Nan Gongling did not say anything and merely stood with her hands behind her back with a proud expression, nodding. The cultivator was delighted and said hurriedly, "It's really fellow Daoist Nan Gong. I've heard of your reputation for a long time. It's truly my fortune to be able to meet you here." Right then, another commotion broke out from the crowd behind her. "Look, it's Jian Wuzong." "Ah! It's him." The cultivator who was initially standing in front of Nan Gongling was even more excited. As though he could no longer see Nan Gongling, he followed the crowd and headed straight for Jian Wuzong. Even Nan Gongling revealed a hint of fear and whispered, "Jian Wuzong, 3rd on the phenomenon ranking." Chapter 909. Nan Gongling seemed to have an extraordinary background and had a sense of pride in his bones. Furthermore, he was indeed a paragon and was prideful. It was rare for Su Zimo to see such an expression on his face. Su Zimo smiled gently. "Seems like you admire Jian Wuzong from the bottom of your heart." "Humph." Nan Gongling harumphed when he heard that. Jian Wuzong, 3rd on the phenomenon ranking, comprehended the strongest phenomenon of sword Dao, infinite swords convergence. Against the envelopment of that phenomenon, all swords will have to submit. When he heard that, Su Zimo was slightly stunned and recalled an old friend. This old friend had also comprehended Jin Dan's phenomenon, infinite swords convergence, in the fight for the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago and defeated the paragon of sword sect, Heng Qiuyu, shocking the world. Dugu Jian. Although he was an old friend, Su Zimo was not familiar with this person. Or rather, it was as though no one in this world was familiar with this person. This person exuded a sense of isolation from the world from head to toe. It was as though there was only the supreme sword Dao in his heart. His eyes were empty and lost. Those eyes would only shine with an incomparable luster when he drew his sword. Su Zimo had an extremely good impression of this person. It was not only because Dugu Jian had helped him in the past. More than that, it was because Dugu Jian stood out in the face of the brutal massacre of the Rakshasa and Protoss back in Myriad Phenomenon City when even Jining Jinjuan had to avoid him. He had no hesitation. That was the true spirit of Sword Dao. He would rather break than bend and press forward with indomitable will. Dugu Jian was the first true sword cultivator that Su Zimo had encountered. Naturally, Nan Gongling did not know what Su Zimo was thinking at the moment. She merely thought that he did not understand the terror of infinite swords convergence when she saw that he was silent. Nan Gongling continued, "If you don't understand, I'll put it in simpler terms. In the face of Jian Wuzong, the combat strength of all sword cultivators will be reduced. The power of all sword techniques used against Jian Wuzong will be greatly reduced. All swords submit, Jian Wuzong is the king of the way of the sword. Oh. Su Zimo was not interested in Jian Wuzong and casually responded. Nan Gongling was naturally angered by Su Zimo's casual attitude and pouted her lips. Some people haven't seen the fight for the phenomenon ranking and naturally can't feel the shock and resplendent scene of paragons clashing. Senior brother Nan Gong, that's enough. Ru Xian could not stand it any longer and frowned slightly. Little Uncle Master, don't stoop to his level. Senior brother Nan Gong doesn't have any ill intentions. Su Zimo smiled faintly. He held the ancient book in his hand and continued to comprehend the sword technique. At the side, Yu Hanyun came to a stall and stood there for a long time, as if she had discovered something. The owner of the stall was also a nascent soul cultivator, but he didn't seem to have much lifespan left. There were many things on the stall that were messy. Sweeping his gaze casually, there was nothing valuable on the stall. Su Zimo's gaze shifted and landed on a black stone. His heart skipped a beat. At that moment, he had just finished reading the heaven-slaying sword art and the illumination stone in his right eye appeared. It was completely white and he could see something unusual. The black stone looked like a lava ore on the surface, but inside it was a crimson crystal the size of an egg. Lava crystal. That was a top-tier universal treasure. In the depths of the lava cave, flames burned endlessly and only took form after 10,000 years of nurturing. The heaven and earth powers were rich and pure. Most importantly, the lava crystal's fire elemental dermic powers were boundless and was one of the materials that Hakka Dojin needed to refine his body. To think that he would encounter a treasure on this trip. Fellow Taoist, how much is this flying sword? Yu Hanyun squatted down and pointed to a flying sword with 2 dermic patterns on the stall and asked softly. What's so good about this flying sword? It's a middle-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapon. All the defective weapons that we failed in weapon refinement in the sect are of this grade. Nan Gongling frowned and muttered. The stall owner was expressionless and coughed a few times before saying slowly, I only want elixirs that can increase my lifespan. I don't want anything else. Ha! Nan Gongling sneered when she heard that and could not help but mock, fellow Taoist, elixirs that can increase one's lifespan in the cultivation world are extremely precious and rare. You can't even exchange for a single elixir with all these random items on your stall. Give up. Under normal circumstances, the items on the stall were indeed worthless. Except for the lava crystal. However, Yu Hanyun did not leave. She picked through the items again and seemingly casually passed the black stone over as well before saying, I'll exchange these for a spirit longevity elixir. Ah! Ru Xian could not help but tug at Yu Hanyun's sleeves and send a voice transmission, Senior sister, it's a loss. Although the spirit longevity elixir could only increase one's lifespan by 50 years, it was already rather rare. Su Zimo stood silently and did not appear. Yu Hanyun seemed to have noticed the extraordinariness of the black stone as well and decided to buy it. The stall owner froze for a moment and stared at Yu Hanyun for a moment with some hesitation. Those who could cultivate to their current realm and were about to exhaust their lifespans were all shrewd. At that moment, he could vaguely sense that there seemed to be some sort of treasure on his stall. However, when he saw that Yu Hanyun had already taken out the spirit longevity elixir, his body shuddered when he saw the vibrant aura. The stall owner hesitated for a moment before grit his teeth. I'll trade. With that said, he snatched the spirit longevity elixir and pushed the items on the stall in front of Yu Hanyun. When he saw that, Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the seller accepted the spirit longevity elixir, he could not go back on his word. That was a tacit rule of the cultivation world. Hold on. Right then, a cold-looking, eagle-eyed cultivator squeezed in and grabbed the stall owner's wrist, saying in a deep voice, I'll give you 2 spirit longevity elixirs in exchange for that stone. The eagle-eyed cultivator was pointing at the black stone that was wrapped in the lava crystal. This, the stall owner was put in a spot. Under normal circumstances, since he had already accepted Yu Hanyun's spirit longevity elixir, the transaction was considered complete. However, he did not expect that someone would offer the price of 2 spirit longevity elixirs. At that moment, Nangong Ling reacted as well. Striding forward, she stood in front of the eagle-eyed cultivator and said coldly, "Why? You're not going to follow the rules." Yu Hanyun hurriedly kept the black stone in her storage bag. The eagle-eyed cultivator narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Kid, you've only cultivated to early stage nascent soul. You'd better restrain yourself lest you die prematurely." The eagle-eyed cultivator was at perfected nascent soul, and that was the reason why he was so confident. Ha! Nangong Ling was so angry that she laughed instead. Releasing her aura, she shouted, "All right, I, Nangong Ling, want to see what capabilities you have today." They're fighting. They're fighting. There's no suspense for an early-stage nascent soul against a perfected nascent soul. Nangong Ling is ranked 83 on the phenomenon ranking. It's hard to say who will win. Furthermore, she's backed by one of the 4 unorthodox groups, 100 Refinements sect. Many cultivators gathered. Hearing the discussions around him, the eagle-eyed cultivator glanced at the sect emblem on Nangong Ling's sleeve with a wary expression. After a moment of silence, the eagle-eyed cultivator did not dare to attack. Gritting his teeth, he turned to leave and glared at Nangong Ling angrily before disappearing into the crowd. Chapter 9-10. Wind Cloud City, Immortal Welcoming Restaurant. When Su Zimo's group of 4 arrived, they casually found a seat by the window on the 3rd floor. There were many immortal fruits, spirit wine and delicacies made from remnant beasts on the table that were filled with fragrance. Ru Xian ate with relish. Just now, Nangong Ling's name was revealed in front of everyone and scared the other party away, stealing the limelight. At that moment, he was in a great mood. Yu Hanyun leaned against the window and looked at the bustling city with a smile, feeling much more relaxed. Su Zimo was still holding the heaven-slaying sword art and comprehending it on his own as though no one was around. "Senior sister, what's that black stone?" Ru Xian's mouth was still stuffed as she sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness. "I'm not sure either. I just have a feeling that the stone is extraordinary." Yu Hanyun said, "Let's get Master to identify it when we return to the sect." Right then, a series of discussions sounded from downstairs and grew louder. "Have you heard? 100 Refinements sect cultivator found a treasure." "What?" "I think it's a lava crystal. He nearly got into a fight with someone earlier on." "That's right, that's a top-grade spirit material. Even the Dharma Dao Jun would love to have it." Hearing these discussions, Nangong Ling and the other 2 exchanged glances. Their expressions were solemn and their eyes were filled with both joy and worry. They were happy that Yu Hanyun had indeed found a treasure. But they were worried that the news had already spread. Furthermore, at this rate, the entire Wind Cloud City would know about it before long. Nangong Ling grit her teeth and said hatefully, "It must be that person who leaked the news out of anger because he did not obtain the treasure." "Truly, humans are sinister," Ru Xian said angrily. Su Zimo was not surprised by this. When he saw the hawk-eyed cultivator leave, he guessed that this matter was not over. Su Zimo looked at the horizon and said, "It's getting late. We've been in Wind Cloud City for a long time. It's time to go back." This time, Nangong Ling and the other 2 did not object. The 3 of them were clear that once the news of the lava crystals spread, they would be in the eye of the storm. Who knew how many pairs of eyes would be watching them? The longer they stayed outside, the more dangerous it would be. At this moment, Nangong Ling and the others could faintly sense that more than 10 powerful auras were approaching the immortal welcoming inn. Many cultivators in the restaurant looked over with flickering eyes. Suddenly, heavy footsteps came from downstairs. The sound of the footsteps was extremely strange. Every step seemed to be able to affect the heartbeat of everyone present, causing their hearts to beat in unison. The rhythm of his footsteps changed, and unknowingly, everyone's heartbeat changed as well. It gradually synchronized with the sound of the footsteps. After what seemed like a long time, a tall and sturdy figure appeared at the top of the stairs. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were deep, as if they contained the vast starry sky. The sound of footsteps stopped abruptly. It did not sound for a long time. It was only at this moment that everyone present realized that something was amiss. After the footsteps stopped, their heartbeats stopped as well, no longer ringing. Some of the cultivators' expressions turned increasingly terrible. Their heartbeats stopped and their bloodlines stopped circulating. Some of the cultivators' faces turned incomparably pale as bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads and rolled down. Thump! Thump! Some of the cultivators could not withstand it and fell to the side. Some of the cultivators struggled to break free from the suffocation. They gasped for breath and looked at the person who had arrived with fear. The expressions of Nangong Ling and the other two turned extremely terrible as well. He could control the heartbeats of others with his footsteps alone. The person had just appeared and shocked everyone without saying a single word. On the third floor, the only person with a normal expression was Su Zimo, who was reading with his head lowered. However, in this huge restaurant, Su Zimo's appearance was truly inconspicuous and not many people noticed it. Sensing the pain of Nangong Ling and the other two, Su Zimo flicked his finger without raising his head. A clear sword hum burst forth from his fingertip. It was as soft as a mosquito and only Nangong Ling and the other two could hear it. However, that sword hum caused Nangong Ling and the other two's heartbeats to return to normal. Their auras were smooth and their bloodlines flowed once more. Ru Xian whispered, Heavenly Dipper Cheng Peng, 15th on the phenomenon ranking. This is a little troublesome. I hope he's not here for us. Nangong Ling sent a voice transmission secretly. He could rely on his status in 100 Refinement sect and his reputation of being 83 on the phenomenon ranking to force the hawk-eyed cultivator to retreat. As for Cheng Peng, be it the sect behind him or his ranking on the phenomenon ranking, he was superior to Nangong Ling. Just as Nangong Ling was praying secretly, Cheng Peng turned his head slightly and looked at the four of them. He walked over expressionlessly. Nangong Ling frowned. Ru Xian looked at Su Zimo and then at Nangong Ling, asking repeatedly with voice transmissions, What should we do? What should we do? In the blink of an eye, Cheng Peng had already arrived before Nangong Ling and the other three. His tall figure almost formed a shadow that enveloped everyone, causing Nangong Ling and the other two to feel a sense of oppression. Helpless, Nangong Ling could only brace herself and stand up with cupped fists. I'm Nangong Ling of 100 Refinement sect. Greetings, fellow Taoist Cheng Peng. The three of them are also cultivators of 100 Refinement sect. Nangong Ling smiled and gave a brief introduction. Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian stood up and cupped their fists towards Cheng Peng, nodding in greeting. Su Zimo was the only one who sat motionlessly on the spot, still reading the ancient book in his hands, as though he was completely immersed. Cheng Peng swept his gaze and did not take it to heart when he saw that Su Zimo was also a nascent soul cultivator and looked unfamiliar. I heard that you bought a lava crystal, Cheng Peng said bluntly. I need that lava crystal. What do you want to exchange for it? This, Nangong Ling frowned. Cheng Peng's words were extremely domineering and did not leave any room for negotiation. Nangong Ling smiled embarrassedly. Fellow Taoist, we bought that lava crystal first. It's of great use to us as well, I'll say it again. Cheng Peng's gaze was cold as he interrupted Nangong Ling and said coldly, I want that lava crystal. Are you going to exchange for it or not? Nangong Ling's expression turned terrible. From the looks of it, Cheng Peng was bent on obtaining the lava crystal. However, if they were to fight, he was definitely not a match for this person. Even the three of them combined would not be enough. He was ranked 83 on the phenomenon ranking while Qingpeng was ranked 15. The difference in combat strength between them was way too great. Nan Gongling looked at Yu Hanyun and took a deep breath. Clenching her fists slightly, she said in a deep voice, "Fellow Taoist, Heavenly Dipper sect is one of the 9 great immortal sects, and our 100 Refinement sect is also one of the 4 unorthodox groups. Both of us belong to the orthodox Tao. Are you trying to snatch it by force?" "Fu fu fu." Qingpeng laughed with mockery in his eyes. "For unorthodox groups. In another month, your 100 Refinement sect will be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. Do you think that I'll have any reservations?" Before he finished his sentence, Qingpeng's gaze intensified and he extended his hand. Stars filled the skies in his palm and enveloped Nan Gongling's group of 4 with a terrifying might. Pust. The expressions of Nan Gongling and the other 2 changed starkly. They had not expected Qingpeng to be so domineering and dare to snatch in Wind Cloud City without any reservations. Furthermore, the 3 of them felt the dermic powers in their bodies being restrained by the stars and could not circulate at all. Chapter 9:11. Suffocation. The intense sense of suffocation caused Nan Gongling and the other 2's expressions to change. Although they were both on the phenomenon ranking, there was a huge difference in combat strength between Nan Gongling and Qingpeng. Against the suppression of the stars, Nan Gongling channeled her spirit consciousness, blood qi, and dermic powers continuously. Veins were popping on her neck, but she could not retaliate. Beneath him, the table and chairs beside him had long been reduced to dust. If Nan Gongling was already in such a state, Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian were even worse off. The 2 women trembled slightly and crackling sounds could be heard from their bodies. Their bones seemed like they were about to fall apart. Ah! Sensing everything, Nan Gongling reared her head and roared into the skies. She was about to go crazy from anxiety as her eyes were bloodshot and her glabella shone as she conjured hand seals with both hands. The Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra circulated continuously. Finally, 2 scarlet flames appeared on Nan Gongling's hands that flickered. Fu! Qingpeng's gaze was deep like the vast starry sky as he sneered, "How dare a firefly compete with the moon? A trapped beast will still fight. Die!" Qingpeng's aura expanded and the stars in his palm turned even more corporeal and thick. His might was wanton, as though he wanted to crush Nan Gongling and the other 2 into minced meat. Sizzle. The flames on Nan Gongling's hands had just risen when they were extinguished by the suppression of the stars and turned into nothingness. Nan Gongling's eyes dimmed. He had not expected the difference between the 2 of them to be so great in a real fight. Less than that, he had not expected that Heavenly Dipper sect cultivators would dare to attack them and steal their treasures in front of everyone in Wind Cloud City. If Qingpeng's attitude towards 100 Refinement sect was only a small example, in that case, 100 Refinement sect might be in greater danger than they had imagined. In that case, it was truly irrational for them to leave the sect. There were countless pairs of eyes watching them from around the immortal welcoming restaurant. Qingpeng might only be the first to make a move. They recalled how their master, Tao Lord Scarlet Star, had repeatedly reminded them not to leave the sect before the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Sigh. Nan Gongling sighed softly and the face of the green-robed man flashed through her mind. If only I listened to little Uncle Master. If I didn't get angry with him, I wouldn't have implicated her in danger. I truly deserve to die. Nan Gongling's eyes dimmed as regret welled up in his heart. At this moment, he heard a voice by his ear. It was neither light nor heavy, calm, and even carried a trace of mockery. You dare to call yourself how you are with your methods? It's little Uncle Master. Of Dipper of Qi. Nan Gongling glanced out of the corner of his eye and subconsciously looked over. Su Zimo, who was initially reading with his head lowered, raised his head slowly with a calm gaze. Clasping 2 fingers together, he formed a sword and swiped it gently in Qingpeng's direction. This movement looked so casual, so elegant and so casual. But the effect was earth-shattering. of. A streak of sword chi burst forth in an incomparably blazing white. Right in front of Nangong Ling, the incomparably heavy stars that were initially suppressing them were sliced into two by the sword chi. It was an extremely shocking scene. The vast river of stars was slashed into two halves by a white sword energy and instantly solidified. Bang! 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 The stars in the skies fell and the Dermic art was sliced into nothingness by a single sword chi. A killing intent from the heavens could shift the stars. A single killing intent was enough to cause a true constellation to descend into chaos. When the sword chi burst forth, it was as easy as flipping one's hand to destroy the star Dermic art that Qingpeng condensed. Qingpeng's pupils constricted violently. Nangong Ling and the others were not involved and could not sense the might of the sword chi. However, he was facing the sword chi directly and could sense it even more clearly. The killing intent emitted by the sword chi made his scalp tingle and his limbs turn cold while his mind shuddered. How could there be such a terrifying sword chi in the world? It was simply trying to extinguish all life. The truly terrifying part was yet to come. After the sword chi sliced the river of stars into two, it did not dissipate and continued slashing towards Qingpeng. Pust! Qingpeng gasped and his expression changed starkly. An illusion appeared in his heart. Under this sword chi, there was no spell, no method, and no weapon that could block it. This sword chi was the most murderous of all. Qingpeng was ranked 15th on the phenomenon ranking after all. After the stars dissipated, he reacted immediately and retracted his palm, slapping his storage bag. Boom! A gigantic shield was erected in front of him. The shield was engraved with the vast firmaments, stars, sun and moon. After injecting Dermic powers, 5 bedazzling patterns lit up. It was a perfect-grade defensive perfected Lord Dermic weapon. In the cultivation world, offensive Dermic weapons were more common and defensive Dermic weapons were rare, let alone perfect-grade ones. This was proof of Qingpeng's status among the disciples of Heavenly Dipper's sect. Almost at the same time that the shield was brought out, the sword chi had already descended. Clang! The sound of metal clashing could be heard when the sword chi collided with the shield. The sword chi vanished, as though it was blocked by the perfect-grade shield Dermic weapon. That was everyone's first reaction. However, everyone's gazes narrowed and their expressions changed starkly. The light on Qingpeng's shield dimmed rapidly and its aura dissipated. The Dermic weapon seemed to have suffered a destructive blow and was crippled. All of a sudden, a change happened. Qingpeng, who was initially hiding behind the shield, shrieked tragically and staggered in retreat. Blood spewed and a severed arm was raised high. Boom! Immediately after, the shield fell to the ground and was split into two. The cut was neat, as though it was sliced into two diagonally by some divine weapon. Looking at Qingpeng, who was lying on the ground with a pale and horrified expression, everyone gradually reacted. The green-robed burly man slashed with his sword finger and released a sword chi that sliced the perfect-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapon into two. Before the sword chi dissipated, it even severed Qingpeng's arm. Although Qingpeng did not die and was lucky enough to survive, everyone could tell. Not only did that sword sever Qingpeng's arm, it even shattered his Dao foundation. The sword chi surged into Qingpeng's body through the wound and sliced his meridians into pieces. Qingpeng was crippled. The cultivators were shocked. A paragon who was ranked 15th on the phenomenon ranking was crippled in a single move. Everyone looked at Su Zimo with a different gaze. Even Nangong Ling and the other two were dumbfounded and froze on the spot, unable to snap out of their stupor. Although they had seen Su Zimo attack before, the shock they felt back then was far from what they felt this time. That was a paragon ranked 15th on the phenomenon ranking. Yet, little Uncle Master crippled him so casually with a single sword chi. Even Su Zimo, who was the one who attacked, was shocked, let alone others. He was prepared to establish his might in front of everyone and intimidate some of the hidden cultivators with his attack. However, he truly did not expect the heaven-slaying sword art to possess such might. One had to know that what he had comprehended now was only the tip of the iceberg. Just the slightest bit of this sword art was enough to cripple a paragon the moment it revealed its sharpness. Chapter 9:12. After a brief silence, there was an uproar. Thud! 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 The few Heavenly Dipper sect disciples who were initially behind Changpeng ran over hurriedly and helped him up. All of them glared at Su Zimo angrily, but they were wary and did not dare to advance. If Changpeng ended up in such a state against that sword chi, which of them would be able to defend against it? Hurry, let's go. Changpeng's face was pale and his breathing was weak as he panted. Return to the sect and report this matter. The few Heavenly Dipper sect disciples did not hesitate and supported Changpeng out of the immortal welcoming restaurant. They summoned an auspicious cloud and sped into the distance. Who is that person? Judging from his Tao robes, he doesn't seem to be a cultivator of 100 refinement sect. He must be a cultivator of sword sect. That's right. I'm afraid only the successor of sword sect can cultivate such a terrifying sword chi. However, that person looks unfamiliar. I've never seen him before. Could he be a paragon that rose recently? The cultivators discussed animatedly and pointed at him. Nangong Ling could clearly sense that some of the powerful auras that were approaching had stopped in their tracks, as though they were stunned by just now. Let's go, let's leave this place. Su Zimo put away the heaven-slaying sword art and placed it in his robes. Standing up, he leaped and arrived on the long street. Nangong Ling and the other two followed hurriedly. The cultivators below the restaurant dispersed and looked at Su Zimo with curious, respectful and hostile gazes. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he strode forward. Nangong Ling and the other two only gradually regained their senses after they were far away. Ru Xian ran a few steps forward excitedly. Little Uncle Master, that slash of yours was way too cool. What's its name? Can you impart it to me? Even Nangong Ling could not help but ask with a voice transmission, Little Uncle Master, have you cultivated in sword sect before? Su Zimo did not reply and merely strode forward. This time, Nangong Ling was not angry. After this incident, the way he looked at Su Zimo was filled with awe. Not everyone could cripple a paragon who was ranked 15th on the phenomenon ranking with a single sword chi. Little martial uncle, don't walk so fast. Ru Xian was excited and there was no fear in her eyes. She skipped behind Su Zimo and sent a voice transmission. Young martial uncle, since you know this sword technique, what are we afraid of? In this wind cloud city, he could do whatever he wanted. Humph. Little Uncle Master, don't worry. We are cultivators of 100 refinement sect after all. Void reversions will definitely not bully us and attack us. If Jining Jinjuan is blind enough to try and snatch the lava crystals, just move your fingers and send out a sword aura. Swoosh. The more Ru Xian spoke, the more excited she became as she gestured with her hands. Suddenly, Su Zimo said, this sword chi is extremely mentally taxing. I can only release it once within a short period of time. Su Zimo was not trying to scare Ru Xian. The heaven-slaying sword art was one of the 3 ancient sword arts. Even though Su Zimo had only comprehended the basics, it was already an overload for him to release that sword chi with his nascent soul realm cultivation. If not for the fact that his essence spirit was far more condensed than those of the same cultivation realm, he would have been injured by the sword chi before it was released. When she heard Su Zimo's reply, Ru Xian withered instantly and did not dare to make a sound. Of course, what Su Zimo was worried about was not someone plotting for the lava crystals, but some existences hidden in the darkness. Su Zimo had a feeling that they were targeted by an even more terrifying enemy. He had to leave this place as soon as possible. Oh, are you trying to escape after obtaining a precious treasure? Fufu, I heard that you guys obtained a lava crystal. What a coincidence, I need that stone as well. Suddenly, a strange voice came from the crowd, drifting erratically. "Who's there? You're hiding." Nan Gongling's gaze was burning as she hollered and surveyed her surroundings. The crowd retreated. But when Nan Gongling looked over, he couldn't find the person who had provoked him. It seemed like everyone was the same, but at the same time, everyone was different. Fufu, as expected of the 83rd place on the phenomenon ranking. How impressive. What's the use of being impressive? You're still trash who needs protection. Hey, green-robed sword cultivator, what's your relationship with those 300 refinement sect cultivators? Let me give you a piece of advice, it's best if you don't get involved with them. 100 refinement sect is about to be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. I reckon that it won't be long before they're destroyed, he 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 he. The mocking voice sounded once more and continued to change directions. There was no way to determine the person's location. Nan Gongling and the other two were enraged when they heard that. However, there was nothing they could do. Su Zimo was initially on his way when he suddenly paused in his tracks. In a flash, he leaped into the crowd beside him. "Get the hell out!" Su Zimo's gaze was like lightning as he extended his palm and spread his fingers. As though he wanted to blot out the skies, he grabbed a cultivator in the middle of the crowd. That person had an ordinary figure and appearance. There was nothing special about him, he was an existence that one would forget after a single glance. However, such an ordinary cultivator's eyes flashed coldly when he saw Su Zimo attack and he laughed strangely. "Fellow Taoist, you're amazing to be able to discover my tracks." That person did not take Su Zimo head-on at all and flipped to retreat at an extremely fast speed. "Unfortunately, it's too late," that person said with deep meaning. At the same time, on the other side of the crowd, an inconspicuous figure was approaching Nan Gongling and the other two rapidly. The cultivator was expressionless and his eyes were calm, there was not even a hint of killing intent. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and his bones crackled. His extended arm expanded by 3 feet and instantly descended on the escaping cultivator's head, grabbing down viciously. Against Su Zimo's palm, the person's head was crushed like tofu and his essence spirit was destroyed as he died on the spot. When Nan Gongling and the other two saw this scene, they suddenly felt an unprecedented murderous intent while their minds were in turmoil. The next moment, the three of them saw a sword beam. It was too fast. Unknowingly, an inconspicuous cultivator had appeared beside them. That person took out a slender flexible sword from somewhere and attacked. Without a doubt, this was an assassination that caused despair. That person's combat strength might not be comparable to Nan Gongling's. However, after that sword strike, Nan Gongling could only wait for death and watch helplessly as the sword slit his throat. He could almost see his throat being slit and spilling scarlet blood all over the long street. Hidden Death Sect, one of the 7 fiend sects. The only ones who could execute an assassination to such an extent that it was flawless and even made one feel despair were Hidden Death Sect cultivators. It had to be said that this assassination was meticulously prepared. First, one person lured Su Zimo away. Another person sneaked over and launched a fatal attack to kill and steal the treasure. The entire process was almost flawless. Unfortunately, they had truly underestimated someone. Just as the sword beam was about to slice Nan Gongling's throat, it suddenly dissipated. The sword was exposed. It was only inches away from Nan Gongling's throat and the sharpness of the sword even severed the hair on Nan Gongling's neck. At that moment, the sword froze in midair motionlessly. One end was gripped in the hands of the Hidden Death Sect cultivator. The other end was gripped by 2 slender, fair fingers and did not move at all. Chapter 9:13. The Hidden Death Sect cultivator was stunned. In front of him stood a green-robed burly man. He was expressionless and his gaze was sharp as a blade as he glared at him coldly with a surging killing intent. The sword in his hands was clamped between 2 fingers of the green-robed burly man and could not budge at all. "Little Uncle Master." Nan Gongling nearly exclaimed after surviving the calamity. Su Zimo was decisive to kill. After killing a hidden death sect cultivator in the crowd, he turned back swiftly and blocked the killing blow of another hidden death sect assassin. It was too fast. They were on completely different levels. Not many people could see Su Zimo's movement technique clearly. Everyone merely felt their visions blur, and Su Zimo had already returned, clamping the hidden death sect cultivator's sword between two fingers. What hidden death sect was good at was almost all concealment and assassination. Hidden death sect cultivators emphasized on killing with a single strike. If they failed to kill with a single strike, they would flee thousands of miles away. They were not adept at fighting head-on. However, Su Zimo's current physique was not inferior to perfect-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapons. The power of his physique was not something that any hidden death sect cultivator could defend against. Even the fiend heir of hidden death sect would be killed on the spot, let alone a relatively ordinary hidden death sect cultivator standing before Su Zimo. Since Su Zimo had already decided to establish his dominance, he naturally would not hold back. A cold glint flashed through his eyes as he exerted strength in his fingers. Clang! The chilling sword was snapped by two of his fingers, and the tip of the sword flew backward, entering the glabella of the hidden death sect cultivator. Exclamation point. A bloodlight flashed, and the essence spirit of the hidden death sect cultivator was also shattered by the tip of the sword and was destroyed on the spot. In the blink of an eye, two Jinying Jinjuan corpses were strewn on the streets. The way many cultivators looked at Su Zimo changed gradually. Standing on the spot, Su Zimo exuded an aura that caused one's heart to shudder. It was the stench of blood. He had killed countless geniuses and stepped on the corpses of countless monsters to accumulate the stench of blood. Originally, Su Zimo didn't want to attract attention, so he restrained his aura. But now, he had to use a thunderous method to destroy all the obstacles in front of him. He had to leave the city as soon as possible and bring Nan Gongling and the other two safely back to the sect. Su Zimo's gaze swept across the crowd, and those who originally harbored evil intentions retreated one after another, not daring to look him in the eye. This was pressure. The pressure that came from the top of the phenomenon ranking. Su Zimo strode forward in huge strides. The crowd dispersed, opening up a path. Nan Gongling and the other two hurriedly followed behind. Along the way, because Cheng Peng, who was ranked 15th on the phenomenon ranking, was crippled and two Jinying Jinjuan of hidden death sect were killed, many people were indeed shocked. Some of the cultivators who wanted to snatch the lava crystals had to reconsider if they could compare to Cheng Peng. Not far away, many cultivators clustered around a Jinying Jinjuan. He was elegant and handsome with bright eyes as he looked over with a smile. Soaring Feather Sect's Wu Tianyu, ranked 11th on the phenomenon ranking this time round. Senior brother, should we make a move? A Soaring Feather Sect cultivator asked softly. Wu Tianyu glanced sideways at that person and asked instead, can you defend against that green-robed cultivator? I can't. Senior brother, you can definitely do it. The friar snorted. Wu Tianyu shook his head and said indifferently, that person is unfathomable and I'm not confident either. The Middle Continent is truly filled with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Cheng Peng's defeat is not unjust. The moment he said that, Wu Tianyu's gaze shifted as he looked at the group of cultivators at the city gate. He smirked and murmured softly, interesting. Under the gazes of many cultivators, Su Zimo's group passed through and arrived at the city gate before long. There were more than 10 cultivators standing at the front. Every single cultivator had cold expressions and carried long swords on their backs. They stood in front of the long street, clearly having no intention of making way. When Nan Gongling saw the person in the lead, her expression changed starkly as she exclaimed, Jian Wuzong. Sword Sect's Jian Wuzong, 3rd on the phenomenon ranking. Ru Xian stuck out her tongue and sent a voice transmission secretly, oh no, Jian Wuzong seems like he's going to attack. Little Uncle Master's sword Qi has just been released and can't attack anymore. What should we do? It's useless even if little Uncle Master can release that sword technique. Don't forget that Jian Wuzong has cultivated the all swords converge phenomenon and all swords submit to him. Nangong Ling said with an anxious expression, all sword cultivators will have their combat strength reduced in front of Jian Wuzong. Little Uncle Master can't avoid it either. Yu Hanyun murmured, I hope Jian Wuzong won't target us. Pausing for a moment, Yu Hanyun hesitated for a moment before making a decision. If he wants to fight for the lava crystal, I'll let him have it. Nangong Ling and Ru Xian did not say anything. In the face of the third on the phenomenon ranking, they felt a sense of helplessness and could only submit. This was an absolute suppression in combat strength. Furthermore, most sword cultivators were bloodthirsty people. If they were implicated because of the lava crystal, it would be too late for them to regret it. Right then, Su Zimo had already rushed forward and said, make way. Nangong Ling and the other two shuddered when they heard that. How many nascent soul cultivators would dare to speak to Jian Wuzong in that manner? Jian Wuzong raised his brow and killing intent surged in his eyes. He exuded a sinister aura and had no intention of hiding it. Nangong Ling hurried forward and tugged at Su Zimo's sleeves, sending a voice transmission, Little Uncle Master, don't be rash. You're a sword cultivator and can't defeat him. After the turn of events just now, Nangong Ling's attitude towards Su Zimo had already changed silently. Yu Hanyun had a worried expression and sent a voice transmission as well, Uncle Master, at most, we'll just give them the stone. There's no need for us to fight with them. It was extremely dangerous to fight against sword cultivators. Sword cultivators cultivated the Tao of killing. As long as they attacked with their swords, they would only return with blood. Su Zimo was indifferent and continued to look at Jian Wuzong without being disadvantaged in terms of aura. Jian Wuzong grinned. You're not from Sword Sect. Initially, the cultivators in Wind Cloud City thought that Su Zimo was the successor of Sword Sect. It was only at this moment that everyone realized. Since you're not the successor of Sword Sect, why didn't you bow when you saw me? Jian Wuzong changed the topic. Why should I bow? Su Zimo asked indifferently. Ha! Jian Wuzong reared his head in laughter and said proudly, Sword Sect is a pilgrimage ground for sword cultivators in the world. I'm the most outstanding successor of Sword Sect. If you don't bow when you see me, you're disrespecting Sword Sect. If you're disrespecting Sword Sect, you're courting death. Many cultivators shook their heads when they heard that. This person is finished. He's truly courting death for offending Jian Wuzong. He's the one who's too sharp. He didn't bow when he saw Sword Sect and didn't know how to restrain himself when he saw Jian Wuzong. He deserves to die here. Nangong Ling and the other two looked anxious but did not know how to persuade him. Right then, Jian Wuzong continued, however, on account that it's not easy for you to cultivate, I can give you a chance. As long as you're willing to follow me, I'll spare your life. This can be considered a huge opportunity. I really didn't expect this to be a glimmer of hope. Being able to follow Jian Wuzong means that he has a chance to join Sword Sect. This person is truly lucky. Everyone was filled with emotions. Right at that moment, everyone heard a sneer that was filled with mockery and ridicule. Do you think you're worthy of me following you? Chapter 9:14. The moment he said that, everyone was in an uproar. Contempt. Extreme contempt. Many cultivators looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a dead man. Jian Wuzong's eyes were first filled with rage. However, he suddenly laughed and nodded repeatedly at Su Zimo. Very good, this is the sharpness a sword cultivator should have. The more you act like this, the more I admire you. At that moment, Jian Wuzong did not realize who he was talking to. Or rather, all the cultivators in Wind Cloud City did not know the true identity of this green-robed man. In Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo could fight against mid-level fiend demons head-on. Mid-level fiend demons were equivalent to void reversions of the cultivation world. Although Jian Wuzong was third on the phenomenon ranking, he was still Jinying Jinjuan. Furthermore, the phenomenon ranking this time round had just ended and his cultivation realm was only at early stage nascent soul. Notwithstanding, Su Zimo was already at the peak of late stage nascent soul. Even 100 years ago, when Su Zimo had just entered the nascent soul realm, it was not difficult for him to suppress Jian Wuzong. Jian Wuzong said slowly, "How about this? Let's spar. If you can receive 3 of my sword strikes, I'll let you guys leave this place." After pausing for a moment, Jian Wuzong continued, "If you can't receive it, follow me obediently and don't go against my will in the future. Do you dare to take the bet? 3 sword strikes is enough." "That's right." Given Jian Wuzong's combat strength, even the 4th on the phenomenon ranking might not be able to receive 3 of his sword strikes if he attacks with his full strength. This green-robed cultivator is bound to lose. Everyone thought that they had a clear view of the situation and discussed fervently. The soaring feather sect cultivator looked at the man beside him and asked softly, "Senior brother, what do you think of this bet?" Jian Wuzong's sword is extremely fast. 3 sword strikes. Wu Tianyu shook his head gently. Among nascent souls, there are probably less than 10 who can receive 3 of his sword strikes. Wu Tianyu and Jian Wuzong were on the same phenomenon ranking and understood each other. He had an extremely high opinion of Jian Wuzong. The soaring feather sect cultivator said, "If that's the case, the green-robed cultivator will definitely lose. The 10 people senior brother mentioned are definitely the top nascent soul experts. Their names shake the world. This person is clearly not one of them." Wu Tianyu said in a low voice, "It's hard to say. I have a feeling that this green-robed cultivator is unfathomable and not simple." The soaring feather sect cultivator was indifferent. "Senior brother, don't forget that he's a sword cultivator. Once he fights, he'll definitely be suppressed by Jian Wuzong. He can't win this bet." On the long street, Nangong Ling, Yu Hanyun, and Ru Xian had worried expressions as they sent voice transmissions to Su Zimo, telling him not to accept the bet. Once they lost, their little martial uncle would become someone else's follower. Neither they nor the 100 Refinement sect could bear it. What's more, Nangong Ling and the others really couldn't see any hope of Su Zimo winning. "How about it? Do you dare to bet?" Jian Wuzong asked with a confident smile. "Ha ha ha ha." Su Zimo reared his head in laughter. "I can bet. However, there's no need for 3 swords. If you can draw your sword in front of me, it'll be my loss." The moment he said that, the crowd was stunned. There was complete silence near the long street. These words were arrogant to the extreme, but when everyone heard it, they felt a kind of arrogance that shook their hearts and souls. Who would dare to say such words in front of Jian Wuzong? Would Yi Tiancheng dare to be the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking this time round? Would the number 2 of the phenomenon ranking, the Yama demon? Who would dare to challenge the Jinying Jinjuan of Tianhuang mainland? Yet, someone dared to. "You." Jian Wuzong narrowed his eyes with a cold glint. This time round, he was truly enraged as he said coldly, "How dare you, kill." Before Jian Wuzong could finish, he was interrupted by Su Zimo's shout. "Sound domain secret skill, thunderclap kill." After cultivating the Purple Thunder manual, the power of thunderclap kill was even stronger than before. The surrounding cultivators felt their bodies shudder as the ground trembled and sand flew. One could imagine what kind of impact Jian Wuzong had to endure. That shout was like a bolt from the blue that exploded in Jian Wuzong's ears, causing his ears to buzz and his scalp to tingle. However, Jian Wuzong was no pushover since he could reach 3rd on the phenomenon ranking. With his rich combat experience, he realized right away that Su Zimo had released a sound domain secret skill. Clang! Clang! Jian Wuzong channeled his blood qi and the sound of sword qi buzzing could be heard from his body. Among the super sects of Tianhuang mainland, some of them were extremely famous for body tempering, such as Glass Palace of the Immortal Sects, Overlord Palace of the Fiend sects and Diamond Monastery of the Buddhist monasteries. In reality, the body tempering techniques of Sword sect were extremely strong as well. They tempered their bodies with sword qi, and during the process of tearing and repairing, their blood qi would become extremely strong and sharp. When the bodies of Sword sect cultivators were cultivated to their limits, their blood qi would be mixed with the sharpness of sword qi. Their fingers were like swords, and they could sever divine weapons with a wave of their fingers. Jian Wuzong channeled his blood qi and had just dispelled the negative effects of Thunderclap Kill when his vision blurred and a green figure crushed over. "You must have a death wish." Jian Wuzong sneered and was about to pull out the sword on his shoulder. He was all too familiar with the action of drawing his sword. It could be said that the first sword technique he practiced after joining Sword sect was how to draw his sword. Even in his dreams and with his senses sealed, Jian Wuzong was able to draw his sword right away. It had already become an instinct for him. However, his sword was only halfway out when it was pushed back by a pair of gigantic hands. Buzz! The moment the sword buzz sounded, it stopped abruptly. The sword had already returned to its sheath. He was fast. Su Zimo was even faster. A green shadow flashed and Su Zimo had already closed in and was only a foot away from him. Bang! 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 Helpless, Jian Wuzong could only fight against Su Zimo barehanded. However, right after, Jian Wuzong's expression changed starkly and he almost could not help but cry out in pain. Su Zimo's body was way too strong. Jian Wuzong's fists and palms felt as though they had collided against a cold and hard rock. After a few moves, his hands were already purplish-green. At that distance, Jian Wuzong did not even have the chance to conjure dermic arts. Su Zimo's attacks were as dense as rain and suffocating. Jian Wuzong grit his teeth and his eyes were bloodshot. Ignoring Su Zimo's palm strike, he pulled out the sword on his shoulder and was prepared to injure both of them. However, Su Zimo's palm swiped across his chest before striding forward and slapping him on the shoulder. Clang! The moment the sword was unsheathed, it was slapped back by Su Zimo's palm once more. Jian Wuzong was so angry that he was trembling, but there was nothing he could do. He retreated continuously, wanting to create space and pull out his sword. However, Su Zimo closed in step by step like a maggot in a corpse and did not give him any chance. In the blink of an eye, both sides had already exchanged dozens of moves. During this period of time, Jian Wuzong wanted to pull out his sword several times but was blocked by Su Zimo. As for his hands and arms, they were already swollen from the clash with Su Zimo and were almost broken. Despair. There was only despair left in Jian Wuzong's heart. There was no chance for him to retaliate. If this continued, his bones would be shattered before he could pull out his sword. He had never been reduced to such a state and lost so thoroughly in a fight. Suppression. Crushing the entire way. He beat the other party until he could not pull out his sword. Chapter 9:15. Domineering. Shocking. Third on the phenomenon ranking, Jian Wuzong, the most outstanding successor of Sword sect, could not even draw his sword in the midst of a fight. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause an uproar. Nangong Ling's mind was in a mess. If she had not witnessed it personally, she would not have imagined that Jian Wuzong would be defeated so thoroughly. Under normal circumstances, Jian Wuzong had cultivated the all-swords phenomenon and obtained the recognition of the sword Dao. Any sword cultivator would be suppressed in front of him. However, the opposite seemed to be the case in this battle. In front of Little Uncle Master, Jian Wuzong was like a child who was beaten up so badly that he could not even draw his sword. What a strong physique! What strong melee combat! Wu Tianyu looked at the two people fighting on the long street and murmured softly. On the long street, Jian Wuzong retreated continuously. The initial pride and composure on his face was replaced with panic. He could not retaliate at all. Jian Wuzong was defeated. Many cultivators looked at this scene in disbelief. Although the phenomenon ranking was a ranking of perfected Jin Dan's strength, after entering the nascent soul realm, if nothing went wrong, cultivators who could be ranked on the ranking would definitely not be weak in combat. Nobody expected that Jian Wuzong, who was third on the phenomenon ranking, would be defeated by an unknown green-robed cultivator. Furthermore, as a sword cultivator, he had not unsheathed his sword the entire time. This was truly a humiliation for sword cultivators. Don't be arrogant, thief. Save senior brother. When the more than 10 sword sect cultivators who were watching from the side saw Jian Wuzong in such a state, they could not care less and attacked one after another. Buzz! 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 One after another, sword beams were resplendent and sword chi crisscrossed, revealing their sharpness. They formed an impenetrable sword net that enveloped Su Zimo. What are you guys doing? Do you have any shame? Are you bullying him with numbers? Ru Xian could not hold it in and shouted. Without a word, Nan Gongling and Yu Hanyun summoned their dermic weapons right away and conjured hand seals, prepared to help Su Zimo. Clang! At this moment, the sound of a sharp sword being unsheathed resounded through the world. A dazzling sword light appeared on the long street. It was white and dazzling as it pierced through the void. The sword on Jian Wuzong's back was pulled out. The sword was long and sharp with a chilling aura. 6 dermic patterns shone on the sword in an extremely blinding manner. It was a Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon. He was ranked 3rd on the phenomenon ranking and the successor of the sword sect. It was only normal for him to possess a Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon. The dermic sword had a powerful background and was known as the startling dermic sword. It was Jian Wuzong's destiny dermic weapon and also his reward for being 3rd on the phenomenon ranking. The expressions of the cultivators changed. Who would have thought that at the very last moment, this sword would still be unsheathed? Everyone knew that a sword cultivator who wielded a sword and was barehanded was on a completely different level from a normal cultivator. If Jian Wuzong wields his sword, that green-robed man will be in danger. Yes, Jian Wuzong's swordsmanship is sharp, and he received the true teachings of the sword sect. Something's not right. The man's eyes widened and he suddenly couldn't continue. Many cultivators noticed something amiss as well. Nan Gongling focused her gaze and could not help but be shocked with disbelief in her eyes. The startling dermic sword was not in Jian Wuzong's hands at all. However, it was in Little Uncle Master's hands. The one who pulled out the startling dermic sword was not Jian Wuzong, but Su Zimo. Not only was he going to beat the other party until he couldn't pull out his sword, he was going to snatch it away. Right then, the sword chi net released by more than 10 sword cultivators of sword sect had already descended. It was bone-chilling, as though it was going to slice the void into pieces. Wielding the startling dermic sword, Su Zimo let out a long roar and slashed in reverse. Rumble. This sword slash actually produced the sound of waves roaring. With his sword, Su Zimo released the intent of raging waves of the sea calming manual. Dermic powers surged in midair and the sword beam was biting cold, as though it had turned into raging waves that collided heavily against the sword net. Instantly, the sword cultivators felt as though they had fallen into a raging sea and could be drowned at any moment. They were not the only ones. Even the surrounding cultivators felt as though they were in the middle of a tsunami, swaying and spinning. In the depths of the raging ocean, every single cultivator felt incomparably insignificant. That was the true power of heaven and earth. Wu Tianyu closed his eyes hurriedly and calmed his mind repeatedly to condense his essence spirit. It was only then that the feeling gradually dissipated. What a strong sword intent! The soaring feather sect cultivators at the side were shocked and pale. Wu Tianyu opened his eyes slowly and frowned slightly with a strange expression. He murmured softly, sword intent, huh. For some reason, he felt that there was something strange about the sword intent. It was as though it lacked the sharpness of the sword Dao and was instead heavier. Cling! Clang! A series of metallic sounds echoed on the battlefield. The sword net shattered. All of the sword light dissipated in an instant, and peace returned to the world once again. Nangong Ling and Yu Hanyan stopped in their tracks and dispersed the dermic seals on their fingertips. That was because there was no need for it anymore. Victory was decided with a single slash. More than 10 sword cultivators fell not far away with pale expressions. The swords in their hands were broken and their tips scattered all over the ground. Some of the sword cultivators' perlicues were torn and fresh blood flowed. They could not hold on to their swords and threw them aside. The grades of those swords were not low either. They were either superior grade or supreme grade perfected Lord Dermic weapons. But now, all of them were crippled and reduced to a pile of scrap metal. The entire process seemed simple and was merely a single slash. However, that was the result of Su Zimo's powerful physique coupled with the Khanate startling dermic sword and the burst of his powerful saber intent. On the long street, only a tall figure was left standing. His black hair fluttered and his green robes were upright. He wielded a sword with a calm expression. Su Zimo raised the sword in his hand and flicked it gently. The sword trembled and let out a buzzing sound that was clear and loud. Good sword, Su Zimo praised and said unquestionably, it's mine now. With that said, he put the startling dermic sword into his storage bag and walked out of the city. Nangong Ling and the other two were stunned for a moment before following hurriedly. This time round, no one in Wind Cloud City dared to stop Su Zimo. Jian Wuzong had an indignant expression as he looked at Su Zimo's back view and grit his teeth. Do you dare to return the startling dermic sword to me? Let's fight again. As long as I have the sword in my hand, I... Before Jian Wuzong could finish, the clothes on his body suddenly exploded into pieces and scattered all over the ground. Pust! The next moment, the crowd was in an uproar. What are you doing? Jian Wuzong surveyed his surroundings and realized that all the cultivators were staring at him with complicated gazes. There was shock, horror, pity and mockery. What are you guys looking at? Jian Wuzong roared again with bloodshot eyes and a menacing expression. Senior brother, why your chest? A sword sect cultivator pointed at Jian Wuzong's chest with a trembling voice and an inexplicable fear. Jian Wuzong lowered his head. Unknowingly, his chest was sliced open by something and was dripping with blood. There were 5 words written in blood on it, cultivate for another 500 years. Jian Wuzong felt chills run down his spine and his limbs turn cold. Those 5 words must have been written on his chest by the green-robed burly man just now when the two of them were fighting. This meant that if the green-robed burly man wanted to kill him, he would have died countless times. However, those 5 words were even worse than killing him. Every single word was heartbreaking. Exclamation point. In front of everyone, Jian Wuzong was enraged by the blow and spat out a mouthful of blood, fainting on the spot. Chapter 9:16. 100 Refinements Sect. Dao Lord Scarlet Star arrived at the sect's 100 Refinement Hall in a hurry and bumped into a middle-aged cultivator with 3 strands of beard. This person had a calm bearing and had a hint of authority between his brows. It was obvious that he had been in a high position for a long time. Greetings, Patriarch. The 2 cultivators at the entrance of the hall bowed to this person. This was the Patriarch of 100 Refinement Sect, Dao Lord White Flames. Senior Brother White Flames. When Dao Lord Scarlet Star saw this person, he hurried forward to greet him. When Dao Lord White Flames saw his anxious expression, as though something major had happened, he asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" Dao Lord Scarlet Star frowned and said hatefully, "Those 3 useless disciples of mine snuck out. They've been out for a day and haven't returned yet." Dao Lord White Flame's expression changed slightly. This was an extremely sensitive period and 100 Refinement Sect was in a precarious situation. To be fair, If Haka-Dojin had not returned in time, they did not know how they would have gotten through this ordeal. Among Tao Lord Scarlet Star's 3 disciples, Yu Hanyun was going to participate in the weapon refinement competition at the Thousand Crane Tea Party a month later. Nothing could go wrong. It was truly dangerous for Yu Hanyun and the other 2 to leave the sect at this moment. Do you know where they went? Tao Lord White Flames asked with a calm expression. I think they went to Wind Cloud City. Tao Lord Scarlet Star was enraged as he grit his teeth. Those 3 brats are really worrisome. I told them to stay in the sect but they refused to listen. If anything were to happen. Tao Lord Scarlet Star could not continue and was both angry and anxious. Don't panic first. Tao Lord White Flames said in a deep voice, Wind Cloud City is filled with cultivators from various major sects and factions of the Middle Continent. They're all from the righteous path and there shouldn't be anyone who would harm them. Furthermore, Wind Cloud City isn't too far from the sect. There shouldn't be any danger. Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. I'm not worried about the righteous path. I'm worried about Hellfire Hall. Ah! Even with Tao Lord White Flame's temperament, he could not help but exclaim at the mention of Hellfire Hall. His expression darkened instantly. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said, as you know, the Master of Hellfire Hall has always wanted to obtain the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. Nangong Ling and the other 2 are the easiest targets for him to target. Furthermore, Hellfire Hall suffered a huge setback last time. How can they let this matter rest? At this moment, a voice rang out in their minds. Other than the 3 of them, who else went with them? Tao Lord Scarlet Star and Tao Lord Scarlet Star shuddered when they heard that voice. Haka-Dojin was using his divine sense to ask them. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said hurriedly, there's also Mo Ling. A cultivator from the sect saw him and he followed as well. That's good. Perhaps there's still a chance. Haka-Dojin muttered to himself. Tao Lord Scarlet Star pursed his lips in disapproval. Although Mo Ling's seniority was high, he was merely a 100-year-old Jiningjinjuan. How high could his combat strength be? Whether he was there or not, it did not matter at all. Hellfire Hall had already failed once. If they really wanted to attack Nangong Ling and the other 2, there was a high chance that they would send void reversions. At that time, what use could Mo Ling be? Could he use his seniority to scare his opponent to death? In reality, Tao Lord Scarlet Star had still underestimated Hellfire Hall's determination. Haka-Dojin said, hurry and send experts of the sect to Wind Cloud City to look for them and bring them back to the sect. Alright, I'll instruct my void reversion disciples to go. Tao Lord White Flames conjured hand seals and prepared to summon his disciples. No. Haka-Dojin rejected immediately. Scarlet Star, put down what you're doing and make a trip personally. You're at the Dharma characteristic realm and your movement technique is fast. If anything happens, you'll be able to suppress it. When he heard that, Tao Lord Scarlet Star's heart skipped a beat. He vaguely realized that things might be more serious than he had imagined. Alright, I'll go now. Without hesitation, Tao Lord Scarlet Star tore through the air in the direction of Wind Cloud City and disappeared from 100 Refinement Sect before long. I hope everything will be fine, Tao Lord White Flames looked into the distance and murmured softly. At the same time, Su Zimo and the other 3 had already left Wind Cloud City and were speeding towards 100 Refinement Sect on their spirit vessel Dermic weapons. This time round, Su Zimo was the one at the helm. He channeled his dermic powers with all his might and pushed the speed of the spirit vessel to its limits, chasing after the stars and moon. Nangong Ling and the other 2 did not notice and were still excited, discussing the battle that happened in Wind Cloud City just now. However, Su Zimo knew very well that the sense of danger that surrounded him did not disappear. Instead, it intensified. Little Uncle Master, although you weren't famous in the past, this battle alone is enough to make you famous. Ru Xian said happily, Little Uncle Master, don't worry. After we return to the sect, I'll definitely help you spread the news so that you can show off. Yu Hanyun smiled without saying anything. The way Nan Gongling looked at Su Zimo had changed as well. There was no longer any hostility from before. Instead, it was replaced with curiosity, admiration and respect. Little Uncle Master, you're a sword cultivator. However, you don't seem to be suppressed at all when you fought against Jian Wuzong. What's going on? Nan Gongling leaned over and asked humbly. Su Zimo had a grim expression as he released his spirit consciousness and stared at the thick night ahead in silence. It was not that he was avoiding the question intentionally. However, his mind was completely focused on checking out his surroundings and preparing to deal with any danger that could descend at any moment. As such, he truly did not hear Nan Gongling's question. If this was in the past, Nan Gongling would have been enraged and mocked him right away. However, this time round, Nan Gongling merely smiled embarrassedly and scratched her head before asking, Little Uncle Master, who's your master? Is he a sword cultivator as well? Is there such a powerful sword cultivator among the seniors of 100 Refinement sect? Su Zimo had once crippled Qingpeng with a single sword chi. At the city gates, he had once released a powerful intent and severed the swords of more than 10 sword cultivators, defeating Jian Wuzong. Therefore, it was not only Nan Gongling, even the cultivators of Wind Cloud City mistakenly thought that Su Zimo was a sword cultivator. Su Zimo still did not answer. Instead, he frowned and his expression turned even more grim in the pitch-black night. Little Uncle Master, what are you doing? Ru Xian came over as well and asked curiously, we've already left Wind Cloud City and there's no danger. Why are you in such a hurry to return? Little Uncle Master, come over and talk to us. Ru Xian shook Su Zimo's arm gently and said coquettishly. Yu Hanyun, who was silent at the side, finally noticed something amiss and asked softly, Uncle Master, is there any danger? Right then, Su Zimo finally spoke, if anything happens later, escape immediately. Don't worry about me. Ah. Nan Gongling and the other two were slightly stunned with confused expressions. Although they had been chatting along the way, they had also released their spirit consciousnesses to check out their surroundings, they did not discover any danger at all. He 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 he. Right then, a sinister laughter sounded in the void, sending chills down one's spine. Kid, you're so sharp to be able to discover me. However, if the three of them can't escape, you can't escape either. Chapter 9:17. The moment the voice sounded, the expressions of Nan Gongling and the other two changed starkly. Nan Gongling gripped her fists tightly and gritted her teeth. The people of Wind Cloud City are truly relentless. To think that they would chase us all the way here. Yu Hanyun took out a black stone from her storage bag and declared, we don't want this lava crystal anymore. If you want it, feel free to take it. Nan Gongling and the other two still did not realize who their opponents were. Su Zimo stood up and said indifferently, they don't want the stone. Put it away. TSK, TSK, TSK. Kid, you're still the smart one, the sinister voice sounded once more. Initially, I wanted to kill you along the way and capture the three of them. But now, it seems like you have quite a number of secrets as well. Hee hee. I can't bear to part with them. Nan Gongling and the other two exchanged glances and seemed to have realized something, looking flustered. Who are you? Nan Gongling took a deep breath and asked again. The moment she said that, 7 figures gradually appeared in the surrounding night. They stood in 7 different directions and surrounded their spirit vessel. The 7 cultivators looked at Su Zimo's group of 4 with cold expressions. Some of them had mocking gazes, some of them had mocking expressions and some of them were filled with killing intent. The 7 cultivators were dressed in the same manner and there was a dark flame tattooed on their sleeves, it was sinister. Hellfire Hall. The expressions of Nan Gongling and the other two turned extremely terrible. The feud between Hellfire Hall and 100 Refinement sect was almost endless. They knew very well that they would not have a good ending if they landed in the hands of Hellfire Hall. When their spirit consciousnesses swept past the 7 Hellfire Hall cultivators, their hearts sank and their limbs turned cold. Void reversions. The 7 Hellfire Hall cultivators were all void reversion experts. There was a major cultivation realm difference between the two sides. Even a single void reversion was enough to kill them, let alone 7. After cultivating to the void return realm, one's essence spirit would not be afraid of the astral winds and scorching sun. It could roam the heavens, and the dharmic powers it could control would be even denser and more powerful. What was even more frightening was that the essence spirits of void reversions were so strong that they could already launch spirit consciousness attacks. Jinying Jinjuan could not withstand the divine sense attack at all. This was the suppression of a great realm. Ru Xian was furious and her face was pale from fright. However, she mustered her courage and shouted, "Why, you guys from Hellfire Hall sent 7 void reversions to deal with the 4 of us, Jinying Jinjuan. How shameless and immoral you are." Towards the end of her sentence, Ru Xian's voice became softer and softer as she lost her aura. The Hellfire Hall was a group of unscrupulous cultivators to begin with. There was no morality to speak of. Hee. The 7 void reversions of Hellfire Hall stood in the surroundings with their arms crossed and their eyes filled with mockery. From beginning to end, Su Zimo had not spoken a single word. He didn't make a move. If there were only 7 void reversions, he was 80% confident that he could kill the 7 of them here if he used all his trump cards. The real reason why Su Zimo did not attack was because there was still someone from Hellfire Hall who had yet to appear. That person was the true backup of Hellfire Hall. Su Zimo stared at the dark night ahead and pursed his lips without saying a word. Not long after, a figure slowly walked out from the darkness. The person was hunched over and supported himself with a walking stick. His hair was white and he staggered as though he could die at any moment. Narrowing his eyes, Su Zimo suppressed the killing intent that had just arisen. Dharma Daojun. Although the person was on the verge of death, the aura he exuded was definitely the unique aura of a Dharma characteristic expert. Although Su Zimo had cultivated 2 unprecedented essence spirits and had the ability to kill those of a higher cultivation realm, it was still not enough. However, the difference of 2 major cultivation realms was like a gigantic chasm that he could not cross. The power of a Dharma characteristic was way too terrifying and he could not withstand it. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo used all his trump cards. He activated his dragonification form and used the divine phoenix bone to injure the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak by surprise. Even then, he was nearly killed by a single palm strike. It was clear how terrifying Dharma Daojun was. Later on, if Hakka Dojin had not appeared, he would have been killed by the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. Although the old man looked old and was in his twilight years, Su Zimo did not dare to act rashly. If he was alone, he had many choices. The safest way was to catch the other party by surprise and use blood escape to break out of the encirclement and flee thousands of miles away. If he released blood escape with all his might, even the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak could barely keep up with him and would not be left behind. The Dharma characteristic old man before him looked like he had 1 foot in the grave and his blood chi was waning. There was no way he could catch up to him. But now, he had Nangong Ling and the other 2 with him. There was no way he could abandon the 3 of them and escape alone. Or perhaps, Su Zimo could choose the divine phoenix bone and attempt to fight the Dharma characteristic old man head-on. However, there was immense danger involved as well. Given Su Zimo's strength, he could not activate the divine phoenix bone on his own initiative. He had to rely on his opponent. Even if he could activate the divine phoenix claw successfully, he might not be able to kill the old man before him. There were too many uncertainties involved. If he could not kill in a single strike, he and Nangong Ling would not be able to escape death. As his thoughts raced, Su Zimo's gaze flickered and he calmed down. He retracted his killing intent and continued to wait for an opportunity. The more such a situation was, the the calmer he had to be. Compared to Su Zimo, although Nan Gongling and the other two were older, they were already flustered and did not know what to do. Nan Gongling and the other two could detect the cultivation realms of the 7 void reversions around them, but they could not detect the old man's cultivation realm. What did that mean? It was Dharma Dao Jun. While Su Zimo was thinking of countermeasures at the side, the minds of Nan Gongling and the other two were in chaos. If the 7 void reversions made the 3 of them feel that their chances of survival were slim, then, the appearance of Dharma Dao Jun left only despair in the hearts of the 3 of them. In front of Dharma Dao Jun, Jinying Jinjuan was like a mortal in front of perfected Jin Dan. He had no chance at all. Yu Hanyun laughed self-deprecatingly. To think that the 3 of us juniors would be worthy of the Dharma Dao Jun of Hellfire Hall taking action. Of course, the 3 of you aren't worth it, the old man grinned and the wrinkles on his face were already stacked together. However, the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra on you guys is worth it. Nan Gongling and the other two felt chills run down their spines. The old man continued, after I capture you guys, 100 Refinement Sect will definitely lose the weapon refinement competition at the 1000 Crane Tea Party a month later. After I squeeze everything out of you, I might even be able to use the 3 of you brats to lure out your master. Don't you think it's worth it to kill 3 birds with 1 stone? TSK, TSK, TSK. When they heard that, Nan Gongling and the other two's faces turned ashen. There was only a single thought in the minds of Nan Gongling and the other two. They had to commit suicide right here. Right then, a massive might descended and Nan Gongling and the other two felt as though they could not move at all, they could not even release their essence spirits. The old man said faintly, once you fall into my hands, you can only die if I want you to. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to commit suicide. Devil. You're the devil. Ru Xian broke down completely and cried out. Nan Gongling and Yu Hanyun were also scared out of their wits and trembled slightly. Chapter 9:18. On the spirit vessel, the only one who could maintain his composure was Su Zimo. Su Zimo had fought his entire way and was invincible among his peers. He had never tasted defeat and had long accumulated an invincible aura. His heart was tough and unshakable. Furthermore, back in Thousand Demon Valley, when he fought for the heaven-slaying sword art, he had fought against many overlords and the 3 top Dharma Dao Jun. Hakka Adojin was the one who borrowed his body in that short fight. However, with that experience, he would not be scared out of his wits when he truly faced the Dharma Dao Jun. Nan Gongling and the other two had lived for more than 200 years but they had never had such an experience. Against the Dharma Dao Jun, they were filled with despair and were stunned by the old man from Hellfire Hall with just a few words. The 3 of them were flustered and had broken down completely. The old man from Hellfire Hall narrowed his eyes and chuckled as he looked at Su Zimo on the spirit vessel. Kid, you've only lived for more than 100 years and yet you have such a temperament. How rare. The old man from Hellfire Hall laughed strangely and changed the topic. You're still so calm. Are you waiting for the experts of 100 Refinement Sect to come and save you? Su Zimo was silent. He believed that 100 Refinement Sect would definitely be alerted if the 4 of them did not return for a day. Perhaps, experts of the sect might have already rushed over to save them. The old man from Hellfire Hall grinned. I might as well tell you that even if 100 Refinement Sect realizes it, it's already too late. Nan Gongling and the other two had despair written all over their faces. It was as though everything was under the control of the old man from Hellfire Hall and they had no chance of escaping. Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian could not move at all. They could only cry silently as their bodies trembled. Old man, from the looks of it, you don't have much lifespan left and are on the verge of death. Su Zimo looked at the elder from Hellfire Hall and suddenly sneered. Hee, even if we die, how long can you live? 30 years? 100 years. Hearing Su Zimo's sneer and ridicule, Nan Gongling glanced sideways and thought to herself, youngest martial uncle is really fearless. He can still laugh in this situation. I don't have the courage to face death with equanimity. As she thought about it, Nangong Ling gritted her teeth and felt her blood boil. She thought to herself, since I'm going to die anyway, I might as well curse to my heart's content before I die. Thinking of this, Nangong Ling threw caution to the wind and cursed, "You old dog, what's the use of cultivating to the transcendence realm? You're still going to die. Ha ha ha, I'll be waiting for you down there, you old bastard." The elder from Hellfire Hall trembled in anger. Su Zimo and Nangong Ling's words had hit his sore spot. No matter how high his cultivation realm was, he could not withstand the corrosion of time. The elder from Hellfire Hall had a dark expression and said coldly with a dark gaze, "Even if I only have 80 years of lifespan left, I'll live longer than you brats." When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he lowered his head slightly, not allowing the killing intent in his eyes to be exposed. The elder from Hellfire Hall grit his teeth. "Don't worry, I'll definitely kill you brats before I die." The moment he said that, the glabella of the old man from Hellfire Hall flickered and he released an extremely terrifying spirit consciousness that descended and collided with the consciousness of Su Zimo and the other three. Ugh! Nangong Ling and the other two shuddered. Their essence spirits dimmed significantly after being struck by the spirit consciousness and fainted on the spot. Su Zimo collapsed limply as well. "Let's go." The elder from Hellfire Hall waved his robes and swept Su Zimo and the other three onto a gigantic dark cloud. Soon, he disappeared from the spot with the 7 void reversions. The spirit vessel that was initially carrying Su Zimo and the other three lost the support of dermic powers and hovered for a moment before falling. The night returned to peace. The dark cloud carried Su Zimo and the others at an extremely fast speed. "We've made a huge contribution this time round. Capturing these 3 people is equivalent to capturing Dao Lord Scarlet Star's lifeline of 100 Refinement Sect. That's right, it's all thanks to Senior Yu. That's right, we've benefited from Senior Yu as well." The 7 void reversions fawned over him once more. The elder from Hellfire Hall had his hands behind his back and said expressionlessly, "If I can fail against 4 nascent soul brats, my 10,000 years of life would have been wasted." When he heard the voices around him, Su Zimo fell to the side. Although he was conscious, he did not move and tried his best to control his emotions. Even his heartbeat and blood flow were maintained at a constant state. If he was only facing void reversions, he would not have to be so cautious. However, the old man from Hellfire Hall was Dharma Dao Jun. Although he was in his twilight years, Su Zimo did not dare to be careless. The reason why he did not faint and was still conscious was not because the old man from Hellfire Hall had failed. In his consciousness, the black-haired essence spirit was indeed knocked unconscious. Even with the protection of Qinglian, the black-haired essence spirit could not defend against the spirit consciousness impact of the old man from Hellfire Hall. However, there was another essence spirit in Su Zimo's consciousness. It was a scarlet-haired Een spirit formed from cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. At that moment, the scarlet-haired Een spirit was hiding in a corner of his consciousness with a calm expression, waiting patiently for an opportunity to strike. As long as he grasped that opportunity, it was not impossible to kill the old man from Hellfire Hall. Of course, all of this had to be done before he returned to Hellfire Hall. If he entered the territory of Hellfire Hall, even if he could kill the old man and the other 7 void reversions, he would definitely alarm the experts of Hellfire Hall and be captured. They had been speeding for more than 2 hours. Su Zimo had a rough idea of the location of Hellfire Hall. If the Dharma Dao Jun were to control his dermic weapon and travel at full speed, he would be able to arrive in about 4 hours. Time was running out. Once he entered Hellfire Hall, he could only wait for death no matter how powerful he was. Su Zimo was starting to get anxious as well. In fact, he was even wondering if he should get up and fight right now. However, he gave up on that thought before long. The dark clouds were huge and Su Zimo's group of 4 was left in the middle. The 7 void reversions were very close to them, but the old man from Hellfire Hall stood at the front of the dark clouds. The two of them were 100 feet apart. If Su Zimo made any strange movements, the old man from Hellfire Hall would definitely sense it before he could approach. There was a high chance that this plan would fail. Su Zimo calmed himself down and continued waiting. The longer this dragged on, the fewer chances he had. But now, he could only wait. He did not have a second chance against the Dharma Dao Jun. If he miscalculated, he would not be the only one who would die, but Nan Gongling and the other two as well. Right then, the old man from Hellfire Hall standing at the front suddenly turned around and walked towards Su Zimo. Senior Yu, the 7 void reversions bowed hurriedly. The old man from Hellfire Hall nodded and looked down at Su Zimo's group of 4 with a dark gaze. No one knew what he was thinking. Senior, is there a problem? A void reversion asked softly. It's a pity that I have such a good physique and my lifespan is almost up. The old man from Hellfire Hall shook his head and sighed. Squatting down, he reached out with his skinny palm and pinched Su Zimo's arm. Licking his lips, he said, if I had met him a few years ago, I would have given up my body to snatch his body. Is that so? Initially, the old man from Hellfire Hall was lamenting to himself. To his surprise, he heard a reply that was bone-chilling and filled with killing intent. Chapter 9:19. The old man from Hellfire Hall was alarmed. The voice did not come from the 7 void reversions around him, but from beside his feet. This nascent soul realm brat was not knocked unconscious by his spirit consciousness. How was that possible? The old man from Hellfire Hall frowned. Suddenly, he smelled the aura of death. That aura had been getting closer over the years as time passed. However, he had never sensed such a strong aura of death. It was as though he would die here the next moment. How could Jining Jinjuan threaten him? Without time to think, the old man from Hellfire Hall wanted to get up and retreat immediately, leaving the dangerous place beneath his feet. All of a sudden, 2 white and strong palms appeared on the withered wrist of the old man from Hellfire Hall, gripping him tightly like iron pincers. He struggled instinctively but could not break free. The old man's expression changed starkly as he swept his gaze. Green veins popped out on the palms that gripped his wrist. His bones had mutated and sharp claws grew from his fingertips. Scarlet scales grew faintly on the back of his hands in a sinister manner. The old man from Hellfire Hall looked over instinctively and his pupils constricted. The green-robed man who should have fainted had already sat up. His black hair had disappeared and was replaced by a head of scarlet hair that was as red as blood. The green-robed man's eyes shone with a demonic glint and he exuded a shuddering aura. You're a demon, the old man from Hellfire Hall had just spoken when he was interrupted by another voice. It was only 2 words but they made his heart skip a beat. Baron. Before his sentence was finished, an extremely strange dermic power fluctuation appeared in the void. With the green-robed man as the center, gray ripples appeared beneath the feet of the old man from Hellfire Hall, enveloping him like water ripples. Initially, the old man from Hellfire Hall could have escaped the range of the gray ripples. However, his wrist was gripped tightly by the green-robed man. With just a slight pause, his entire body had already sunk into the gray ripples. It was a strange feeling. It was as if he had fallen into a swamp, and his body became somewhat heavy. Immediately after, the old man from Hellfire Hall seemed to have sensed something as his eyes widened in shock. His body began to tremble uncontrollably. Life. Yuan. The old man from Hellfire Hall opened his mouth with a ferocious expression. His voice trembled as though he was experiencing immense fear. He was nearing the end of his life. His qi and blood had deteriorated severely, and his body was thin and weak. But now, the little bit of flesh left on his body was drying up at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, his entire body was only skin and bones. My longevity Hellfire Hall seemed to want to roar hysterically, but its voice became hoarser and lower until it was silent. His round eyes had already become dull and lifeless. Even his eyeballs had withered. The glabella of the old man from Hellfire Hall flickered and a spirit consciousness fluctuation surged. It was as though the essence spirit in his sea of consciousness wanted to make a final struggle. But soon, there was no more movement. The old man's life aura had already vanished without a trace. The 7 void reversions of Hellfire Hall watched helplessly as the old man from Hellfire Hall withered away in a single breath, leaving only a skeleton with no life force left in his body. The 7 of them were dumbfounded with disbelief in their eyes. The entire process happened too quickly and the 7 void reversions were stunned for a moment, unable to recover from their stupor. The gray ripple had already spread to their sides. Initially, the 7 void reversions did not feel anything when they were within. But soon, their expressions changed. Their lifespans were decreasing. Although it was not fast, the decrease was irreversible. Right then, the green-robed man who was initially sitting on the ground leaped up. He was tall and his clothes were tattered as scarlet scales grew on his body. His scarlet hair danced and demonic chi surged with a murderous aura. It was as though he was an ancient demon that wanted to devour the world and slaughter all living beings. Who are you? A void reversion asked with a trembling voice, his face pale from fright by the sudden turn of events. The scarlet-haired demon was none other than Su Zimo. Although the process of killing the old man from Hellfire Hall, the Dharma Dao Jun, seems simple, he had actually planned it for a long time. Ever since the old man from Hellfire Hall appeared, Su Zimo had been thinking about how to escape with Nangong Ling and the other 2. No matter how he thought about it, he could not come up with a foolproof plan. Later on, he noticed something. The old man from Hellfire Hall exuded a rich aura of old age, as though he did not have long to live. That was the reason why Su Zimo deliberately provoked the old man from Hellfire Hall with words such as how he did not have much lifespan left and would not be able to live for long. Nangong Ling thought that Su Zimo was already prepared to die and was satisfied with his words before he died, so she scolded as well. Little did she know that Su Zimo was trying to find out the background of the old man from Hellfire Hall. Indeed, the old man from Hellfire Hall fell for it and revealed that he still had 80 years of lifespan. The old man from Hellfire Hall could not be blamed for that. Although he had lived for 10,000 years, he had never heard of Jining Jinjuan being able to control a power that could affect the Dharma Dao Jun. Furthermore, it was an irreversible power that could deplete one's lifespan. He was not the only one. In Tianhuang mainland, there was probably no one who would believe that a nascent soul cultivator could already control such power. That was also the terror of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Of course, there were many strange and mysterious runes in the demonic art, Baron, that Su Zimo could not understand. Furthermore, he was restricted by his cultivation realm and could not unleash the true power of Baron. Furthermore, the closer one was to the center of the gray ripples of Baron, the faster one's lifespan would decrease. Therefore, Su Zimo did not dare to act rashly. He could only wait for an opportunity. He wanted the 2 of them to be close enough so that the old man from Hellfire Hall would not have any chance to escape. The truth was as Su Zimo had expected. After releasing Baron, the first reaction of the old man from Hellfire Hall was to retreat. However, Su Zimo had already gripped the old man's arms tightly and made it difficult for him to break free. Of course, even if he was close to the center of the gray ripples, his lifespan would only decrease at a rate of 100 years per breath. For a normal Dharma Dao Jun, he would have enough time to react or even counterattack within a single breath. A single spirit consciousness of the Dharma Dao Jun was enough to kill Su Zimo. However, it was different for the old man from Hellfire Hall. In a single breath, his remaining 80 years of lifespan were expended. Although the entire process was short, the probing from the beginning, the waiting in the middle, and the final attack would have resulted in 2 completely different outcomes if any of the steps went wrong. The demonic art, Baron, could not unleash its true power and could only be considered as a strange move. For example, right now, within the range of the gray ripples, a Dharma Dao Jun died on the spot, but the 7 void reversions did not have much of an impact. Firstly, the 7 void reversions were slightly further away and their lifespans decreased at a slower rate, 80 years per breath and 50 years per breath. Secondly, the 7 of them were only slightly more than 2,000 years old. Compared to their lifespans of 5,000 years, they could be considered to be at their peak. The reduction of their lifespans by 1 or 2 breaths had too little of an impact on them. Of course, as long as the old man from Hellfire Hall was killed, the remaining 7 people would no longer be a threat to Su Zimo. Chapter 920. What demonic art is that? On the dark clouds, a void reversion exclaimed with a flustered expression. A demonic art to kill. Su Zimo hollered and took a deep breath before roaring into the skies. Roar. A loud and clear dragon roar sounded, penetrating metal and cracking rocks while the world trembled. There were no outsiders here. Now that Nangong Ling and the other 2 had fainted, Su Zimo no longer had to conceal himself and transformed into his dragon's form, releasing a dragon roar. In the primordial era, dragons were the rulers of the 10,000 races. Any race, including humans, would feel uncontrollable fear when they heard the dragon roar from the depths of their memories and bloodline. Dragons' roars were a killing technique of dragons to begin with. Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and fused with dragon's blood. His bloodline was even stronger than true dragons. Right now, the impact of that dragon roar on the 7 void reversions was way too great. Among them, the void reversion closest to him was caught off guard and froze on the spot. His eyes were bloodshot and his expression froze. The next moment, scarlet blood flowed out from the 7 orifices of the void reversion. This person was only at the early stage void reversion realm and had a weak physique. He could not withstand the penetrative power of the dragon roar and was killed on the spot. His primordial spirit couldn't even escape and was shattered into pieces. Back at the 1,000 demon meet, Su Zimo was already able to suppress the territorial lords without transforming into his dragon form. All the territorial lords were the strongest mid-level fiend demons in 1,000 Demon Valley. The 7 void reversions before him were only cultivators of Hellfire Hall. How could they compare to the territorial lords who had fought their way through? Furthermore, Su Zimo had already transformed into his dragon form and released his full strength. The 7 void reversions were no match for him at all. Although the void reversions standing slightly further away were not killed by the dragon roar, their bodies shuddered and their minds were in a mess as their ears buzzed. In a flash, Su Zimo arrived before one of them instantly and poked the person's glabella with his finger. Puff! A bloody hole had appeared between his eyebrows. Before the void reversion could react, his essence spirit was stabbed to death. Even the mid-level fiendish demons of the myriad Demon Valley could not resist Su Zimo's physical body. Those void reversions had weak physiques and were like paper in front of Su Zimo, who had transformed into a dragon. They could not withstand a single blow. Whoosh! Su Zimo's figure flashed again, and as demonic chi surged, he reached out with his thick fingers and pierced the glabellas of the other 2 void reversions. Void reversions were completely helpless against his dragon claws. In the blink of an eye, 4 void reversions were dead. Finally, the remaining 3 void reversions snapped out of their stupor and turned pale when they saw the bloody scene around them. Whoosh! An evil wind blew. A tall, scarlet figure appeared in front of the 3 of them. It stretched out a huge, ferocious hand and grabbed at the 3 of them. Kill! Among them, 2 void reversions grit their teeth and released their spirit consciousness attacks right away. At the same time, they conjured hand seals and conjured 2 gigantic balls of hellfire. The remaining void reversion turned and fled without hesitation. 2 divine sense attacks arrived in an instant. However, a bedazzling golden light shone from Su Zimo's left wrist, forming a golden light barrier with a series of mysterious runes on it. The Mingwang prayer beads were Essence Spirit Dermic weapons. When the two spirit consciousness attacks collided against the golden barrier, they dissipated immediately before they could enter Su Zimo's consciousness. The two balls of hellfire fused together and formed a dark and cold fireball that smashed towards Su Zimo's face. Su Zimo harumphed coldly and reached out with his right hand to grab the hellfire ball. Right in front of the two void reversions, the hellfire ball was destroyed by Su Zimo's bare hands. As for Su Zimo's palm, it was completely unharmed. The two void reversions' mouths were agape with shock in their eyes, as though they had seen a ghost. That was a palm that possessed the divine phoenix bone. The hellfire could not corrode it at all. After two consecutive attacks failed, Su Zimo had already arrived before the two of them. At this distance, the two void reversions did not even have a chance to escape. Su Zimo reached out and slapped down on their heads. Poof! Poof! Their heads were smashed on the spot and their essence spirits were destroyed. Raising his head, Su Zimo looked at the last void reversion who had already fled the battlefield and was about to disappear into the night. He was motionless, as though he had given up on pursuing. However, a strange change happened to his right eye. It was as though a blazing sun had been born and released a bedazzling beam of light that entered the void and pierced the void reversion's head instantly. Thump! The last void reversion died here. The beam of light dissipated. Night descended once more and peace returned to the world. In the pitch-black clouds, only a tall figure was left. He was covered in scarlet scales and his scarlet hair danced. His gaze was like a peerless fiend celestial that could devour mountains and rivers and look down on the world. At that moment, not many people in the cultivation world knew that the monster incarnate of history that caused countless paragons to tremble and countless sects to fear had already arrived in the middle continent. The autumn wind was bleak and the flames of war were about to ignite. In the blink of an eye, a night passed. Dawn had just broken and the east was white. Tao Lord's scarlet star was travel-worn and had a dark expression. He could not conceal the worry in his eyes as he arrived in front of the 100 Refinements Great Hall. When Tao Lord White Flames saw Tao Lord's scarlet star return alone, he realized that something was amiss. However, he still went forward and asked, "How was it?" Tao Lord's scarlet star shook his head. He had searched outside for an entire night without resting and was mentally and physically exhausted. Don't be anxious. Perhaps they're just having fun. Given their cultivation, they might not be in any danger, Tao Lord White Flames consoled. Tao Lord Scarlet Star sighed. It's too late. What? Tao Lord White Flames asked. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said, I rushed to Wind Cloud City immediately and found out that the four of them did cause quite a commotion in the city. However, they managed to rush out safely. Thereafter, I chased out of Wind Cloud City and searched along the way before finally discovering this. Tao Lord Scarlet Star took out a spirit vessel with a look of sorrow in his eyes. This is Ru Xian's spirit vessel. I gave it to her as a gift when she entered the nascent soul realm. This. Tao Lord White Flames understood that Nangong Ling and the other three were most likely doomed. However, he still consoled, the loss of the spirit vessel might not prove anything. Perhaps the four of them managed to escape. Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. There's Dharma Daojuan's aura left on the spirit vessel. Furthermore, it's from Hellfire Hall. What? Tao Lord White Flames' expression changed. Tao Lord Scarlet Star endured his grief and grit his teeth. Nangong and the others have already been captured by Hellfire Hall. Hellfire Hall left this aura behind on purpose as well. Hellfire Hall, you're declaring war. You're playing with fire. Haka Adojin's voice sounded from the hall with a murderous aura. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said sorrowfully, poor children. I wonder what kind of torture they'll have to endure after falling into Hellfire Hall. Tao Lord White Flames knew that Nangong Ling and the other two were personal disciples of Tao Lord Scarlet Star and treated them as his own. Now that his three disciples were in trouble, no one could understand the pain in Tao Lord Scarlet Star's heart, and he did not know how to console him either. Right then, a sect disciple sped over with a delighted expression and shouted, "Patriarch, Sect Master, Senior Brother Nangong and the others are back." Chapter 921. At that moment, Tao Lord Scarlet Star was immersed in grief and did not hear anything clearly. On the other hand, Tao Lord White Flames frowned and looked at the person, asking in a deep voice, "Which Senior Brother Nangong?" The sect disciple said, "It's Senior Brother Nangong Ling, Senior Sister Yu Hanyun and Senior Sister Ru Xian." What? This time round, Tao Lord Scarlet Star heard it clearly. Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and arrived before the disciple instantly. He grabbed the disciple's shoulders and asked loudly with widened eyes, "Are you saying that Nangong Ling and the others are still alive and have returned?" "Yes, I heard from the disciples patrolling the vicinity of the sect that Senior Brother Nangong and the others are heading towards the sect." The cultivator was shocked by Tao Lord Scarlet Star's appearance and replied hurriedly. The news of Nangong Ling and the other three being captured was still a secret and was not made public. Tao Lord White Flames and Tao Lord Scarlet Star were worried that this matter would cause panic. The two of them merely instructed their disciples to pay attention to the news and whereabouts of Nangong Ling and the other three. Therefore, the cultivator did not know why the two Tao Lords were so agitated. Without thinking, Tao Lord Scarlet Star wanted to head over to welcome them. Tao Lord White Flames was the one who calmed down and grabbed him, reminding, "Wait, be careful of traps." Ah! Tao Lord Scarlet Star was stunned for a moment before reacting quickly. This was way too strange. Nangong Ling and the other two Jinying Jinjuan were captured by the Dharma Daojun of Hellfire Hall. Why would they suddenly return? Tao Lord White Flames had a calm expression as he turned and asked, "Apart from the four of them, is there anyone else following them?" "I'm not sure about that." "I don't think so," the sect disciple said. "If there were outsiders, the senior brother who sent the message would definitely have mentioned it." Tao Lord Scarlet Star was anxious and asked hurriedly, "Are the three of them injured? How are they? Were they threatened?" The sect disciple was sweating profusely. The message only said that Senior Brother Nangong and the other three are safe and sound. As for whether they were threatened or not, I really don't know. That's enough. Right then, Hakka Adojin's voice sounded in Tao Lord Scarlet Star's mind. "Go and bring them back. This calamity should have been resolved." Hakka Adojin did not know how Su Zimo managed to escape from Dharma Daojun with Nangong Ling and the others. However, he speculated that only Su Zimo could create such a possibility. In fact, Hakka Adojin had more or less guessed it. However, he did not expect that Su Zimo did not escape from the Dharma Daojun. Instead, he killed the Dharma Daojun. "Alright, I'll go now." Tao Lord Scarlet Star could not wait any longer and sped out of the sect in a flash. On a brand new spirit boat, Nangong Ling and the other two had already woken up. After more than 4 hours of travel, the spirit boat was about to arrive at 100 Refinements Sect. "Little Uncle Master, what's going on?" "Little Uncle Master, what happened? Didn't we fall into the hands of Hellfire Hall?" "Little Uncle Master, where's that old fart?" Along the way, ever since Nangong Ling and the other two woke up, they had gathered in front of Su Zimo and asked non-stop, wishing they could pry open his head. Even someone as calm as Yu Hanyun could not sit still. With a slightly red face, she tugged at Su Zimo's sleeves and asked softly, "Uncle Master, what happened last night?" Su Zimo had already transformed into his black-haired, green-robed form. He merely sat in front of the spirit boat and smiled bitterly. "I don't know either. When I woke up, we were already on this spirit boat." "Little Uncle Master, you're lying. I don't believe you." Ru Xian pouted with a doubtful expression. Yu Hanyun tilted her head slightly as well and looked at Su Zimo without blinking, as though she wanted to see through some secrets. For some reason, Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian felt that this matter definitely had something to do with Su Zimo. It was not as simple as he said. A woman's intuition was truly accurate. It did not make sense either. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he thought that he had exposed something. However, he could not explain or say anything about this. Could it be that he had displayed his might with his nascent soul cultivation and killed the Dharma Dao Jun before transforming into his half-dragon, half-human form and killing the 7 void reversions as well? This sounded even more fantastical than a fantasy. Furthermore, he did not want to expose his identity. At that thought, Su Zimo could only grit his teeth and say, "It's just that my cultivation realm is higher and I woke up earlier than you guys." Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian were still doubtful and refused to believe it. Compared to the two of them, Nangong Ling was much more realistic. Nangong Ling helped Su Zimo out from the side and said, "Junior sister, don't bother little Uncle Master anymore. A peerless expert should have made a move for us to avert danger." "Who is that peerless expert? Why isn't he showing himself?" Ru Xian pursed her lips and asked instead. This, Nangong Ling looked embarrassed and was speechless. How would he know who the peerless expert was? Turning around, Ru Xian glared at Su Zimo. Little Uncle Master, don't try to hide it. You must have something to do with this." "I got it." Suddenly, a thought flashed through Ru Xian's mind and she exclaimed. Everyone present was startled. Ru Xian approached Su Zimo mysteriously and said firmly, "Little Uncle Master, stop hiding. You must have found that peerless expert, right?" Su Zimo, after a while, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he saw that Ru Xian and Nangong Ling were still pestering him. Suddenly, his expression turned unfathomable. "All right, since you guys have already discovered my secret, I won't hide it anymore." Su Zimo coughed gently and said indifferently, "Actually, I was the one who killed Dharma Dao Jun of Hellfire Hall and the 7 void reversions before rescuing you guys." TSK. Ru Xian did not believe Su Zimo's words. On the other hand, Yu Hanyun frowned slightly and pondered for a long time, as though she had to ponder over every single word Su Zimo said. 100 Refinement Sect was right ahead. All of a sudden, the sound of clothes fluttering could be heard as a figure flew over at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already descended on the spirit vessel. "Master!" Nangong Ling and the other two had escaped death. Now that they saw Dao Lord's Scarlet Star, they were naturally delighted and stood up to greet him. However, right after, the three of them seemed to have thought of something and gradually reacted. All of them felt guilty and lowered their heads, not daring to speak. Initially, Dao Lord Scarlet Star's face was filled with worry. However, when he saw that Nangong Ling and the other two were alive and uninjured, his expression darkened and he was enraged. "You 3 brats, can't you stop making me worry?" "Ah!" After a brief silence, Dao Lord Scarlet Star roared and spat on the faces of the 3 of them. Su Zimo looked at Nangong Ling and the other two and shrugged, wishing them all the best. He hurriedly distanced himself from them, afraid that he would be implicated. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.